Chapter 716. Loss of Parents 3. The entire Changyang clan fell into a deathly silence. All the people stared at the 5 elderly men in the sky with fear and hatred, but no one was willing to announce Jian Chen's whereabouts. Just at this moment, 3 great presences flew over from outside city. They arrived before the 5 people very soon. They were Qin Wuming, Qin Wujian and Qin Wutian. Seniors, please release the patriarch. You must not harm the patriarch. Jian Chen is an imperial protector of our Qinhuang kingdom. If Imperial Protector Jian has some misunderstandings with seniors, we hope that everyone can sit down and talk over it, and not fall out just because of some small things. Qin Wutian said with his hand clasped. From the presents given off by the 5 elderly men, he already knew that they were saint rulers. They were a powerful force that even the Qinhuang kingdom needed to be cautious about, and could not be underestimated. So Qin Wutian's tone was extremely polite. What do you think a mere Qinhuang kingdom can do? The corner of old man Moting's lips curled up from a sliver of disdain. He looked at the 3 people coldly and said with a deep voice, "It's best if you don't intervene here. Otherwise, even if you are people of the Qinhuang kingdom, we won't be polite. Go back to where you came from." Old man Mating swung his hand, and a great amount of energy of the world immediately rushed at the 3 people. They could not resist against it at all, and was directly pushed far away by the energy of the world. Old man Situ's wrinkled hand held onto Changyang Ba's throat tightly, causing Changyang Ba to become unable to speak. He glanced down coldly again and sneered. "You've all kept your mouth rather tight. Since you don't want to speak, don't blame me for being merciless." Old man Situ suddenly tightened his grasp, and with a crack, Changyang Ba's neck was directly snapped by him. Shortly afterwards, Old man Situ let go of Changyang Ba. His body immediately fell from the sky like a broken kite. "Patriarch! Husband!" Cries erupted from the Changyang manor. All the people were aggrieved and enraged. A few Earth Saint Master immediately leapt up and carefully caught Changyang Ba's body. However, his neck was already broken, so he had already passed away. After all, Changyang Ba still had not become a Heaven Saint Master, so his neck and heart were all fatal weaknesses. "Patriarch!" After learning Changyang Ba's situation, all the people of the manor cried out in grief and rage again. Many of the elders looked at the 5 old men in the sky with bloodshot eyes. "This is only an example. Tell us where Jian Chen is, or tell him to come out. Otherwise, this will be the outcome for all of you." Old man Situ sneered. "Even if we die, we will never tell you the whereabouts of the 4th young master. If you have the ability, kill us all. The 4th young master will avenge us one day." A loyal head guard roared out in rage, as if he did not fear death. "Looking to die?" Old man Situ's gaze became cold. With the point of a finger, a swift gale shot out from the tips of his fingers like a lightning bolt. It landed between the eyebrows of the head guard, piercing through his head. The head guard immediately collapsed on the ground, with red and white liquids flowing from the hole. The scene deeply shocked the guards of the Changyang clan. All of them stared at the 5 elderly men in terror. They could not help but take a few steps back. Within them, not everyone was loyal to the Changyang clan, unwilling to give up their lives at any moment and place for the flame. Immediately, a few who feared death fled towards the outside with great speed. They wanted to leave to avoid the disaster. "Don't think any of you can leave without telling us Jian Chen's whereabouts." A 5th heavenly layer saint ruler sneered in the sky. Shortly afterwards, a transparent barrier appeared silently with a thought of his. It completely enveloped the Changyang manor, trapping everyone inside. Changyang Ba lay on the ground with his eyes tightly closed, unmoving. Bai Yuntian, Yu Fengyan, Ling Long and Bai Yushuang gathered around him. They were all extremely pained and grieved to the extreme. Old man Situ's glance landed on the 4 women. The corners of his lips curled into a sneer, and shortly afterwards, he swung his hand gently. An invisible force immediately tightly binded the 4 women, before dragging them into the air with great speeds. "Speak, where is Jian Chen? Otherwise, don't think any of you can live." Old man Situ sneered. In order to find Jian Chen, he had already decided to start a massacre. Although it was said that saint rulers would suffer celestial decay sooner from committing overly great sins, That was only when they killed countless people. After all, a fight between saint ruler would cause too great of a commotion. If two saint rulers were to go full out in a packed city, they could easily destroy the entire city. As for the millions or even tens of millions citizens of the city, they definitely would not be able to survive. Only under situations like that would celestial decay occur. However, if it was just killed several dozen or several hundreds of people, there was no problem at all. Old Man Situ stared cold at the four women. He sneered, "Tell me the whereabouts of Jian Chen. Otherwise, don't think any of you can live. I'm Xiang'er's mother. If you want to kill me. The others have nothing to do with it. Don't bring innocent people into this." Bai Yintian stared at Old Man Situ. There was no fear within her eyes at all. Hearing that, Old Man Situ's interest was piqued. "You're Jian Chen's mother? Good, very good. If I kill Jian Chen's mother and father, I don't believe he'll fail to appear." Killing intent rose up in Old Man Situ's eyes. He did not show any compassion towards the woman. As he clenched his wrinkled hand, it broke Bai Yuntian's neck. "Fourth sister! Fourth madam!" Cries erupted from the surroundings once again. Many of the older people and loyal guards wept in pain, while the other three women also became sorrowful. "You're next." Old Man Situ did not give the people any time to recover. He stared coldly at the three remaining women and said, "I'll give you one last chance. Tell us Jian Chen's whereabouts, or you'll have the same outcome as Jian Chen's mother and father. If you want to kill, then do it. Keep dreaming about getting Xiang Tian's whereabouts from me. Even if I, Yu Fengyan, die, I will not tell you." Jian Chen's second aunt stared hatefully at Old Man Situ as she gnashed her teeth. She already hated Old Man Situ to the core. "Very well, then you will the third one to die." Old Man Situ's expression became overcast as he grabbed Yu Fengyan by the neck with his wrinkled hand. However, just when he was about to snap Yu Fengyan's neck, there was a sudden change in the situation. The space before him suddenly ripped open, and a red flash shot out of the crack, shooting towards the center of Old Man Situ's eyebrows. Chapter 717. Four protectors of the Bloodsword sect. Even though the change occurred extremely suddenly and without any prior signs, Old Man Situ was a sixth heavenly layer saint ruler, so his reaction speed was extremely fast. He immediately released Yu Fengyan before flying back by 100 meters in a flash. The speed of the red light was also extremely fast. It seemed to exceed the speed of lightning, following Old Man Situ closely as he retreated 100 meters. Directly piercing at the center of Old Man Situ's eyebrows. A gleam of light flashed across Old Man Situ's eyes. With a sneer, the space before him immediately froze in an attempt to forcefully lock the red flash midair. The red light seemed extremely small, but it carried great power. Not only did the space frozen by Old Man Situ fail to hinder the red light in any way, it was shattered by the energy from the red light, before continuing towards the center of Old Man Situ's eyebrows. However, a dark staff had already appeared in Old Man Situ's hands in this very moment. Grasping it with two hands, the staff immediately began to radiate with a dark light after an explosive shout. It was thrust at the red light with great speed. Ding! With a clear sound, the dark staff and the red light collided. The red light was immediately knocked away. Old Man Situ trembled slightly and could not help but take 3 steps back. His expression was solemn. The transparent barrier that enveloped the Changyang Manor suddenly broke. Shortly afterwards, a middle-aged man in blood-red, long robes appeared out of nowhere 100 meters away. He casually extended both hands to catch the red light. At that moment, the red light that had attacked Old Man Situ could be clearly seen. It was actually a conical awl, around 4/3 of a meter long and a finger thick. The middle-aged man floated midair like a demon god. His long, red hair moved in the windless sky floating about. He was expressionless and stared at the 5 old men coldly. A harsh light flickered in his eyes, and killing intent radiated from them without any intention of concealing. As for the long awl in his hand, it seemed to be dyed blood red, giving off a demonic red glow. The 5 old men no longer paid any more attention to the people of the Changyang clan. They all glared at the red-robed man. Someone had actually appeared to meddle with what they were doing at such an important time. which caused the five of them to become extremely angry. "Sir, who are you? Why do you meddle with what we are doing?" Old Man Matting shouted with a deep voice. His eyes also began to flicker with killing intent. Although the man in red robes possessed similar strength as him, it did not cause Old Man Matting any fear, because they had 5 people while he was just by himself. They had an advantage in numbers. "The 5 of you are working with the Gilligan clan, doing things that betray the human race. We have come under the sect master's orders to capture and kill," the man said expressionlessly. His tone was extremely cold and carried no emotions. When he got to the last 3 words, he said it with great pauses. As the 3 words "capture" and "kill" came out of the man's mouth, a powerful killing intent suddenly erupted from him, rushing at the 5 people with a great presence, like a roaring wave. Before the powerful killing intent, the surrounding space seemed to become viscous. It was clear that the man had reached a high degree of proficiency in controlling killing intent. Even though he gave off monstrous killing intent, the killing intent only tightly enveloped the 5 old men. It did not spread any further, and did not affect the people down below at all. The 5 old men all became solemn. The strength of the killing intent from the man had caused them to tremble with fear. This was because it was pure killing intent accumulated from slaughtering countless lives, vastly different from the killing intent that originated from the heart. At this moment, they were flooded with disbelief from feeling such powerful and pure killing intent from a saint ruler. This was because what saint ruler worried most about was massacres. Otherwise, once they committed such a great sin, they would suffer celestial decay and lose their lives. However, what made them even more shocked was what the man had said. He actually knew about the relationship between the 5 of them and the Gilligan clan. The matter was a big deal because once it got out, the 5 of them would become the public enemies of the Tianyuan continent. Not good. This person actually knows about our relationship with the Gilligan clan. This is extremely bad. Behind Old Man Matting, a 5th heavenly layer said with a soft voice, "There's only one person. Let's move together. We have to kill him as soon as possible, and not let him get away." Old Man Siddhu quickly made a decision. The staff in his hand immediately rushed towards the man with a great force. "Do it together!" Old Man Matting exclaimed with a deep voice, and also materialized his saint weapon, rushing at the man. The man remained expressionless. Shortly afterwards, he actually disappeared suddenly, vanishing into thin air. In the next moment, a weird red glow appeared before Old Man Siddhu. It shot towards the center of Old Man Siddhu's eyebrows with lightning speed. As it approached Old Man Siddhu, it actually began to form mini afterimages. From 1 to 2, 2 to 4 and 4 to 8, it transformed into a group of densely packed afterimages, surrounding Old Man Siddhu. Every afterimage contained the presence of a great energy, as if it possessed great offensive power. It was impossible to distinguish between the real and the fake. Old Man Siddhu shouted out loud, and vast darkness attributed saint force surged wildly from his body to protect his entire body. At the same time, the staff in his hands was coated with a layer of invisible world force. Old Man Siddhu swung the staff countless times, keeping the balls of red light at bay. Just when Old Man Siddhu began to tire from handling the balls of red light, the space before him ripped open. Another ball of red light slipped out from the crack, shooting towards the center of Old Man Siddhu's eyebrows with extreme speed. This time, Old Man Siddhu was unable to react at all. The ball of red light arrived before his forehead in the blink of an eye. At that crucial moment, Old Man Siddhu's head was jerked to one side, avoiding it dangerously. However, a shallow, bloody mark had already appeared on his face. He came within an inch of having a hole punched through his brain, and an outcome of having his soul wiped out. Old Man Siddhu's expression became extremely dark. The opponent was also a 6th heavenly layer saint ruler. Yet the way the person fought had already reached a level of perfection. It was extremely weird, and almost impossible to guard again. He had almost died because of it. Be careful everyone, this person's attack is very weird. Old Man Siddhu broadcasted with a deep voice to alert everyone. The man appeared on the other side of Old Man Siddhu, and the red ball of light that had left a bloody mark on Old Man Siddhu's face returned to his hand. It transformed into a long awl. However, The man began to move once again not long after. With a single movement, he transformed into many afterimages. As he rushed at the 5 old men, he directly thrust the blood-red awl in his hand towards Old Man Situ. Old Man Situ had already raised his vigilance to the limit. He moved along with his 4 companions, all moving towards the man from different directions. The terrifying power from the saint weapon shook up the surrounding space to prevent the man from disappearing again. A bitter smile of mockery formed from the man's lips. He ignored the attacks from the 4 other people, locking tightly onto Old Man Situ. However, just at this moment, a change to the situation occurred. 3 balls of red light appeared strangely behind the 3 fifth heavenly layer old men, and passed through their backs with speed as swift as a lightning bolt. Afterwards, the 3 balls of red light immediately gathered together, rushing towards Old Man Matting with great speed. When the 3 fifth heavenly layer old men were struck by the red light, they all vomited blood. They were swamped with disbelief. With their strength, they could not feel anything unusual behind them. The attack of the red balls of light seemed to appear out of nowhere. If they had not seen it with their eyes, they would struggle to believe it even existed. As the balls of red light passed through them, a strand of baleful force actually remained in their bodies. It constantly ate away at their vitality within their bodies, forcing the 3 of them to give up on their attacks, and immediately use Saint Force to purge the baleful force from their bodies. On the other side, Old Man Situ and the man fought. The 3 balls of red light kept Matting busy. The balls of light were extremely fast, leaving behind several wounds on Old Man Matting's body, with a few flashes. Also, there were strands of baleful force left behind in the wounds, constantly eating away at his injuries. This is baleful force. With a change in Old Man Matting's expression, he immediately backed off away from the 3 balls of red light. However, the 3 balls of light did not pursue him. They hung in the air, unmoving, and shortly afterwards, 3 other people in long blood-red robes appeared beside the balls of light. They reached and grabbed the red balls of light unhurriedly. At this moment, the 3 balls of light could be seen clearly. They were actually all sharp conical awls of finger thickness. They were completely the same. Seeing how 3 other blood-robed men had appeared, Old Man Situ, who was currently entangled with the first man, immediately felt gloomy. He immediately struck out powerfully, knocking the man away, before quickly retreating and reconvening with Old Man Matting and the 3 others. The 4 middle-aged men in long, blood-red robes did not pursue the 5 old men in battle. Instead, they stood in a row mid-air, holding onto the same blood-red awl in their hands. They stared at the 5 old men without any expression. The 5 old men stared at the 4 blood-robed men with ugly expression. When they saw the appearances of the 4 blood-robed men, a sliver of shock immediately appeared within their eyes. This was because not only were the attires and weapons of the 4 people the same, even their appearances were the same, without any differences whatsoever. "Who are you?" Old Man Situ yelled out with a deep voice again. He felt extremely curious about the identities of the 4 people. This time, the person who had appeared first did not remain silent. He said indifferently, "We are the 4 protectors of the Bloodsword sect." "What? The Bloodsword sect?" The expressions of the 5 old men changed greatly. They exclaimed out of surprise. "Disappeared 1,000 years ago, one of the 3 great assassination organizations, that Bloodsword sect." Chapter 7:18. The welling of sorrow. Not only did the 5 elderly men know about the Bloodsword sect, they also knew just how powerful the Bloodsword sect was. It scared the 5 of them very much. "Not good, they're actually from the Bloodsword sect. Let's go." Old Man Matting exclaimed without any further thought. Before he had even finished speaking, he began to flee into the distance at a great speed. "Let's go." Old Man Situ yelled loudly, and also began to flee. The remaining 3 fifth heavenly layer old men naturally did not dare to stay for any longer, fleeing into the distance almost simultaneously with Old Man Situ. "The sect master has orders to capture and kill the 5 of them. Pursue them." The man who had appeared first of the 4 said coldly. Afterwards, they all turned into streaks of red light simultaneously to pursue the 5 men, disappearing into the distance in the blink of an eye. Although the appearance of the 4 protectors from the Bloodsword sect had saved the Chongyang clan. Those in the Chongyang clan did not feel a sense of joy from surviving the disaster. Instead, they were all heavy-hearted. The entire Chongyang manor was flooded by a dense feeling of sorrow. The guards within the Chongyang clan were frightened to death by what had happened. Immediately, some guards stumbled towards the outside of the manor with trembling legs, each with pale faces. Afterwards, more and more guards who feared death and did not want to be drawn into the matter all chose to leave. Most of them were guards who were hired by the Chongyang clan with a lot of money. They worked at the Chongyang clan, but they were not hell-bent on the job. If it were ordinary people, they would charge up without fearing death and massacre bravely. But the people the Chongyang clan had provoked were saint rulers. Also, it was not just one saint ruler, but 5. They felt burdened by a great pressure. And with the death of Jian Chen's parents, Chongyang Ba and Bai Yuntian, they all believed the Chongyang clan was utterly doomed this time. Although there was still the 4th young master, who possessed a strength that could rival the saint rulers, they all believed that the odds really were against the 4th young master this time. The high-ranking members of the Chongyang clan sensed the departure of the guards, but they did not stop any of them, allowing them to leave. Not long after, many of the guards, servants and followers of the Chongyang clan had left. Only around 400 royal guards stayed behind, as well as a few mercenaries and followers who were born and raised within the clan. The parents of the followers were all old members of the Chongyang clan. Even some of their ancestors had always worked in the Chongyang manor, so they were extremely loyal. Fourth sister, nothing must happen to you. Wake up, wake up. Jian Chen's second aunt Yu Fengyan leaned on by Yuntian's corpse wailing. She constantly shook her body. In the surroundings, the older people of the Chongyang clan remained silent. They all displayed a deep feeling of grief. Today, what happened definitely was an extremely heavy blow to the Chongyang clan. The news of the Chongyang clan disaster spread in all directions like wildfire. Very soon, it had covered a radius of several thousand kilometers, causing all those who heard it to be greatly astounded. Whilst everything was unfolding, Jian Chen was having a merry time with the third prince, Qin Ji, in the Qinhuang kingdom. They sat a large, round table which was full of people, with around a dozen or so. However, other than Jian Chen and Qin Ji, the others were all female. They were all princesses of the Qinhuang kingdom, or young ladies of great clans. All of them were extremely pretty, and even some of them seemed to be able to cause fish to drown just from their appearance. They were all famed beauties within the Qinhuang kingdom. The beauties had come for an obvious reason, perhaps because of the orders from elder members of their clans, or perhaps they just wanted to come themselves. Beside Jian Chen, the 2 princesses, Qin Shuang and Qin Yubing, sat close to Jian Chen. They smelt like orchids and constantly helped Jian Chen to wine and food. Their gazes at Jian Chen were filled with admiration and infatuation. Haha, brother Jian Chen, I, Qin Ji, have lived at the Drifting Clouds Palace for 30 years, yet it's never been as lively as it is today. All these beauties and young ladies of great clans have gathered in my Drifting Clouds Palace. It's a great honor for my humble abode. Qin Ji chugged down a cup of good wine and laughed in a carefree manner, which had originated from his joy. Although Jian Chen was already a saint ruler both in name and reality, he still remembered Qin Ji as a brother, even though his status was greatly different from before. It moved Qin Ji greatly. His brother, Jian Chen, was an imperial protector of the kingdom. With a relationship like that, Qin Ji would be full of confidence even when he spoke to his own father, the king. Qin Ji could even feel that his father now treated him very differently, and even the eminent dukes and ministers who held great power treated him much more courteously than before. Jian Chen's face carried a warm smile. He was a person who viewed friendship with great importance. Even though he did not have many sworn brothers, Qin Ji was one of them, so no matter how much he changed, he would never forget their relationship. After clinking glasses with Qin Ji, Jian Chen wanted to down the entire cup of good wine. However, just when the cup touched his lips, Jian Chen suddenly shook violently. A lot of the wine was split, dirtying his clothes. The 2 princesses sitting next to Jian Chen immediately pulled out their silk, fragrant handkerchiefs that had accompanied them for great times to gently wipe at the wine on Jian Chen's clothes. They said gently, "Young Master Jianchen, you should slow down. Look, the wine's been splashed onto your clothes." Jianchen did not pay any attention to the two princesses' voice. He slowly put down the cup and grasped his chest with his hand. His complexion began to change, and his expression slowly became solemn. Feeling the change in Jianchen, Qingji immediately showed an expression of concern and asked, "Brother Jianchen, what's wrong?" Jianchen did not reply. His eyebrows were tightly furrowed, and his hand remained tightly pressed on his chest. This was because he suddenly felt a weird pain in his heart, and at the same time, his calm and immovable state of mind suddenly began to waver. He became perturbed and felt a great sense of unease and agitation flood his soul from deep within. "What's happening? Just what's happening? What has happened?" Jianchen mumbled to himself at a loss. He had never encountered such a situation, even when he faced against insurmountable foes or incoming dangers. He had never felt such a feeling before. "Brother Jianchen, just what's happening to you?" Qingji placed down his glass of wine and stared at Jianchen in confusion. "I don't know. Why do I suddenly feel uneasy?" Jianchen slowly stood up from his seat and paced around the palace. His eyebrows were tightly furrowed. He had no idea just what had happened. Around the table, all the famed beauties looked at each other. They did not know just what had happened to Jianchen. Suddenly, a gleam of light flashed across Jianchen's eyes. His expression immediately became grim and thought, "Perhaps something has happened at home?" Thinking up to there, Jianchen's uneasiness became even stronger, causing him to change greatly in expression. A great wave of terror flooded his heart. The terror was not a type of fear brought on by undefeatable enemies, but a fear that extremely terrible things had happened. "Brother Qingji, I must depart immediately. I will be bidding farewell first." Jianchen could not stay for any longer. He immediately bid farewell to Qingji, before apologizing to the famed beauties around the table. Afterwards, he hurried out of the Drifting Clouds Palace, rushing over to where the space gate was in the royal palace. Qingji did not urge Jianchen to stay. He stood in the Drifting Clouds Palace and watched as Jianchen departed into the distance. His expression was full of doubt, and shortly afterwards, he muttered to himself, "Perhaps something's happened to Jianchen's home?" Jianchen's departure was very hurried. He did not even bid farewell to the king or the 4 imperial protectors, and instead directly got people to activate the space gate, using his identity as an imperial protector. He passed through the gate and left the Qinhuang kingdom. As there was a destination set up for space gates outside Lore City in the Jessen kingdom, Jianchen directly arrived outside the city. When Jianchen arrived outside the city, he arrived right in the center of the camp of the Eastern Deity Swords. There were soldiers clad in silver armor patrolling everywhere. The opening of the space gate alerted the soldiers of the Eastern Deity Swords. Immediately, several people saw Jianchen exit the space gate, but they seemed to know who Jianchen was. After seeing him clearly, they all dropped to one knee and exclaimed, "We greet the Imperial Protector." In the blink of an eye, everyone in the surroundings knelt on one knee. Jianchen did not have the time to pay any attention to the soldiers. He immediately shot into the sky, flying towards Lore City. Jianchen descended from the sky in the Changyang manner. The moment his feet touched the ground, Jianchen seemed to have been petrified, standing there blankly and dumbstruck. In front of him, there was a ring of people composed of the elderly people and guards who had not left. As for the center of the ring, Bai Yintian and Changyang Ba lay there, eyes closed and pale-faced. All the remaining people of the Changyang clan gathered there. None of them spoke, feeling great remorse within their hearts. The entire Changyang clan was enveloped by a great feeling of grief. It was less than 2 hours since the tragedy had occurred. Jianchen stared blankly in the direction of the people. Although the center of the crowd was covered up by the surrounding people, he seemed to be able to see through the obstruction and clearly observe what was inside. Chapter 719, Sorrow Mother, Father. After a long while 2 painful cries came from Jianchen. Jianchen slowly walked towards the group of people with trembling feet. "It's the 4th young master's voice. The 4th young master has returned. The 4th young master is back." The guards that gathered together discovered Jianchen, who had appeared at a moment unbeknownst to them. They all cried out, but their voices were not filled joy like before, but rather grief and sorrow. A pathway immediately formed in front of Jianchen. He walked forwards with shaking steps before finally arriving in front of Bai Yuntian and Changyang Ba. Seeing parents on the ground, a deep feeling of sorrow filled Jianchen's soul. "Mother! Father!" Jianchen cried out sorrowfully. He wanted to cry his heart out. His eyes became bloodshot and blood-red tears welled up in his eyes, slowly flowing down his face. With his current strength, he naturally could feel that his parents were already dead. Even with the high-grade radiant spirit pills he possessed, he was unable to revive the two. "Fourth young master, I am sorry. This old servant was useless, unable to properly protect the patriarch and the madam." Uncle Chang arrived beside Jianchen with his shaking body. His face was pale and filled with self-blame. Jianchen did not say anything. He stared lifelessly at his parents' bodies while the tears of blood constantly flowed from his eyes. A while later, Jianchen's lifeless eyes finally regained some light, and closely afterwards, his gaze was aghast. He asked with a deep voice, "Just what has happened? Who has killed my parents?" Jianchen's voice was not loud, but it was icy cold. Even the surrounding temperature abruptly plummeted with what he said, becoming chilly. The surrounding guards and elderly people immediately felt a cold intent envelope their bodies, causing them to shiver, without any control. At that current moment, although Jianchen did not give off any presence, he was like a death god to the surrounding people, unbelievably terrifying. "Fourth young master, before, a few saint rulers came to our Changyang manor, and said that they were looking for you. The patriarch and the fourth madam were killed by them." Uncle Chang said sorrowfully, his tone gloomy. Jianchen tightly clenched his fists, and a great killing intent erupted from his body. It seemed to cause the surrounding space to become sticky. Just at that moment, Jianchen suddenly raised his head and looked into the distance. He saw 4 blood-red figures heading over and around the 4 people. There was a powerful but concealed killing intent, orbiting slowly around the 4 of them. It was baleful force, condensed using a special method after killing countless life forms. Jianchen immediately felt that the 4 people were saint rulers, and jumped to the conclusion that they were the people who murdered his parents. His eyes became filled with the gleam of vengeance, and his gaze became horrifying. The chaotic Nidan with Jianchen's dantian began to tremble violently. Strands of chaotic force flowed unrelentingly from the chaotic Nidan, surging violently through Jianchen's body like wild horses. It filled every corner of Jianchen's body, and at the same time, a rocketing presence exploded from Jianchen. It surged into the sky, accompanied by powerful killing intent. It seemed to form a dark cloud in the sky. "Arg!" Jianchen gave out a long roar into the sky. His hair began to move even though there was no wind, dancing about madly. The dragon-slaying sword immediately appeared in his right hand, giving off a dark, beautiful glow. Suddenly, Jianchen surged into the sky. He shot towards the 4 red figures in the distance like a lightning bolt, wielding the dragon-slaying sword. Seeing Jianchen charge like a madman at them, the 4 blood-red figures came to a screeching stop. They floated midair, each with furrowed eyebrows. "Pay for my parents' life." Jianchen roared at the sky and swung the dragon-slaying sword at the 4 people. A powerful sword chi shot out of the sword, flying towards the 4 people, carrying a presence of destruction with it. Wherever the sword chi passed by, it caused the space to crack, creating long, thin pitch-black cracks that would repair in the blink of an eye. "What is this power? Such strength?" One of the red-clothed men exclaimed in surprise. Shortly afterwards, a long blood-colored awl appeared in his hand. At the same time, a similar awl appeared in the hands of the other 3 people. They thrust out their awls simultaneously, which rushed at the sword chi from Jianchen with powerful baleful force. Boom! A loud sound of collision was created as the sword chi came together with the 4 red awls. A powerful ripple of energy transformed into a violent wind, wreaking havoc in the surrounding. The sword chi was immediately dispersed by the 4 awls. However, the baleful force surrounding the awls also grew much dimmer, before flying back into the 4 people's hands simultaneously. Jianchen understood how strong the 4 people were, but he did not feel the slightest fear. He stared icily at the 4 people, and a powerful and pure sword chi erupted from his body. Within it, there was a dense killing intent. "Stop, fourth young master, stop!" At this moment, an old and feeble voice sounded from below. The pale-faced Uncle Chang used the energy of the world as he flew from the Changyang Manor in a tottering fashion. He had suffered a blow from a saint ruler. Even though it was just a casual strike, his injury was very heavy. After just flying a little, the world energy that allowed his levitate quickly disappeared, and he began to fall from the sky. The coldness in Jian Chen's eyes quickly decreased slightly. Seeing Uncle Chang fall from the sky, Jian Chen's expression suddenly changed and images of his childhood immediately floated through his head. Shortly afterwards, he ignored the 4 red-clothed men, fusing with the surrounding space to approach and catch Uncle Chang. A mouthful of blood sprayed from Uncle Chang's mouth, which dyed his old face blood red. With a slight thought, a few radiant spirit pills immediately flew out from Jian Chen's space ring, entering Uncle Chang's mouth. With the radiant spirit pills, Uncle Chang's condition stopped worsening and slowly regained stability. He looked at Jian Chen with a dull gaze and said powerlessly, "Fourth young master, it's not them. It's not them who killed the patriarch and the 4th madam. If it were not for their sudden appearance which chased away the murderers, perhaps our Changyang clan will no longer have anyone alive." Hearing that, Jian Chen raised his head and looked at the 4 red-clothed men. The icy cold killing intent in his eyes slowly dispersed, and even the presence he gave off was slowly withdrawn. Without a single word, he carried Uncle Chang's body into the manor. At dusk, a lot of people had already gathered outside the manor. All the respected patriarchs within Lore City had all gone to the manor to express sympathy, and even some people of great clans of neighboring cities had come. However, all of them were kept outside. Under the 4th young master's orders, the entire manor was in a lockdown, refusing to receive any guests. Chapter 720. Determination. Now that the patriarch of the Changyang clan had passed away, Jian Chen had basically become the head of the clan. Even the older members of the clan agreed to it. Under Jian Chen's command, the Changyang manor had gone into lockdown, refusing to receive any guests. They locked all of the people from the great clans who had come to express sympathy outside, which caused the manor to be surrounded with people. Before the main entrance, it was so jam-packed that even water would struggle to flow through the crowd. Even though it was like that, those who were locked out did not dare to be resentful. Not to mention the fact that the genius of the clan was in there. The Changyang clan had encountered such a great disaster today, so even if they behaved unusually, or even radically, it was understandable. Within the Changyang manor in a large room, it was currently full with people. Basically all the old people and members of the clan had gathered there. Before everyone was a luxurious bed, whereby Yintian and Changyangba currently lay. Jian Chen sat blankly beside the bed. His dull eyes stared at his dead parents, and he seemed to be petrified, unable to move at all. Behind Jian Chen, the sheet-white faces of Jian Chen's 1st and 3rd aunt were covered with tears. They stood there silently and sorrowfully, while Jian Chen's 2nd aunt had already cried to the point where her eyes had become red and swollen. On the side, Changyang, who sat in a wheelchair, staring calmly at the 2 people on the bed. Changyang, who was the only person who remained calm about Changyangba and Bai Yuntian's death. However, the emotions in his eyes varied constantly, sometimes stricken with grief, sometimes sorrowful, sometimes lost, sometimes melancholy, sometimes dull and sometimes calm. Almost all the emotions of people flashed across Changyang Hu's eyes. At that moment, no one knew what Changyang Hu was thinking. Even though the large and luxurious room was filled with people, it was unusually silent. The atmosphere was extremely heavy. The news about the deaths of the Changyang clan patriarch and Changyang Xiangtian's mother continued to spread further. On the 2nd day, the king of Jessan Kingdom had arrived at the manor with commander of the imperial guards, Bai Dao, under the accompaniment of a heaven saint master. 2 hours later, the principal of Kargath Academy, Kafir, had also come to the Changyang clan. Afterwards, basically all the respected people within the Jessan Kingdom had gathered in Lore City. What happened with the Changyang clan created a very great commotion. The people had come to confirm the reality of the news, as well as to express sympathy. However, those people were all denied entry without any exceptions. They were unable to enter the clan, while only the king and principal, who close ties with the clan, were allowed in. Sister, brother will definitely avenge you. No matter how strong the opponent is, as long as brother is alive, brother will definitely avenge you. Looking at Bai Yuntian, who lay on the bed, Bai Dao's expression became extremely sorrowful. His fists were already clenched, his unsharp nails actually deeply piercing into his palms, which caused his 2 hands to bleed. Meanwhile, the sliver of a recollection appeared in the depths of his eyes. He could not help but think about the moment when he had fled with his sister over 20 years ago. In that moment, Bai Dao had already secretly made the decision. In the future, he would spend all his efforts in raising his strength. In the blink of an eye, another day passed. On that day, Yu Yu, Bai Lian Jiedatai newbies, Bai Hai and Huang Wan, had all come to the Changyang clan from the faraway Flame Mercenaries, along with Tianmu Ling from the Tianmu clan, and the 8th Heavenly Layer Saint King Old Woman. The old woman swept her gaze across the manor. She seemed to be able to see through the walls, observing everything clearly within the manor. She sighed gently in her heart and thought, just who did this Jianshan offend to actually have several saint rulers to move against his parents and do such despicable things? Sigh, this time, Linger didn't hold back, and even got the old man to help guard the Flame Mercenaries. Looks like Jianshan's status in Linger's heart is greater than normal. However, my Tianmu clan has helped Jianshan greatly this time, and I don't think Jianshan will forget. The matter about the tungsten alloy mine should be easier to handle now. The old man thought of by the old woman was Tianmu Ling's grandpa Jun. He was a powerful 9th Heavenly Layer Saint ruler, and was an old couple with Tianmu Ling's grandma Wang. After understanding the situation with Bai Yuntian and Changyang Ba, Bai Lian and Yu Yu became extremely sad, especially Bai Lian. She became so stricken with grief that she fainted. As for Bai Hai, the founder of the Bai family, he struggled to suppress his rage, and declared on the spot that he would personally tear the 5 murders to pieces. After all, Bai Yuntian was one of the few descendants of the Bai family. Her departure caused great sorrow to Bai Hai. The Changyang clan did not hold a glorious funeral for Changyang Ba and Bai Yuntian. The older members constantly brought it up, but they were all shot down by Jianshan. They all felt extremely helpless. Jianshan stayed within the room for 3 days, and only then did his state of mind recover from the rage and sorrow from before, returning to calmness. 3 days later, most of the people had already left the room, with only a few remaining. Jianshan finally moved from the posture he had held for 3 days. He walked up to the bed step by step, and gently pulled up the blankets for his parents. He said softly, "Mother, father, I will definitely revive you." Jianshan's gaze suddenly became resolute. He knew that not only did powerful radiant saint masters possess the power of regrowing limbs, they would even revive the dead. Hearing what Jianshan said, the perplexed gaze of Changyang who quickly disappeared. It was replaced by peace, without any sorrow or any joy. It did not even seem to carry any signs of emotion, becoming terrifyingly calm. "Brother, it'll be all up to you for father and 4th aunt," Changyang who said softly to Jianshan. Jianshan stared deeply into his brother's eyes. He nodded and said, "Brother, don't worry. I swear that I'll revive mother and father." In that moment, Jianshan's decision to go to the Holy Empire to break through Class 6 became even more resolute. Jianshan comforted the grieving Bai Lian slightly, before leaving the room. When he arrived in the guest room, he immediately met Tianmu Ling and the old woman. However, Jianshan just was not in the mood to discuss with them at that moment. He left the room after just some small conversation, going outside to catch some fresh air. Outside, Jianshan's gaze suddenly gathered and landed on the 4 middle-aged men in blood-red clothes close by. The 4 men currently stood beside each other with their eyes closed and arms crossed. Although they stood ordinarily there, they seemed to carry the presence of the world, as if they were fused with the world. The guards of the Changyang clan all knew how powerful the 4 men were. So even though the Changyang manor was in lockdown, they did not dare to chase away the 4 men. During that time, some of clan elders even went up courteously to thank them. But the four men were very cold. They did not pay any attention to the elders expressing gratitude, not even opening their eyes. Jianchen stared and observed the four red-clothed men. From the identical appearances of the four people, he could already roughly guess that if the four had not undergone any manipulation in appearance, there were definitely rarely seen quadruplets. Chen did not know the identity of the four men. However, they had saved the Changyang clan when it was in trouble and helped the Changyang clan avoid a tragedy, which made Jianchen feel grateful. Just when Jianchen went up to thank the four of them, they suddenly opened their eyes and looked at Jianchen simultaneously. There were no emotions in their eyes at all, only coldness and indifference. Jianchen, the four of us have waited until now is because the sect master has sent you a message. The Gilligan clan king has already sent several powerful humans against you, and he wants you to be more careful. Jianchen heard a cold and indifferent voice. This was the voice transmission that only saint rulers could use. As soon as the message reached the end, the four men seemed to have a spiritual connection, turning into streaks of red light and rushing into the sky. They disappeared into the horizon in the blink of an eye. Jianchen's expression became serious. He gazed deeply at the horizon where the four men had disappeared. The light within his eyes flickered, while his complexion fluctuated. Just who are those four people? Who is the sect master they speak of? And why do they know that the Gilligan clan king wants to deal with me? Perhaps they already know about the winged tiger god? Jianchen constantly thought about those questions, before having images of the mercenary city grand elder Tianjian and the mysterious Uncle Xiao flash through his mind. However, he remained unsure. As for Uncle Xiao, Jianchen had already thought that he was a saint ruler before, because he possessed the abilities of saint rulers. However, after becoming a saint ruler, this notion began to waver, because Jianchen had always been guessing at Uncle Xiao's strength. Jianchen had never been sure whether Uncle Xiao was a saint ruler or something above a saint ruler. Uncle Xiao always brought an unfathomable but extremely ordinary feeling to Jianchen. Chapter 721. The Bloodsword Sect's history. Jianchen stared silently in the direction where the four red-clothed men had disappeared for a long time. His eyes constantly flickered, displaying uncertainty. Fourth young master, we should stop grieving. The patriarch and the fourth madam have already passed away. We should quickly hold a funeral for them. At this moment, an old man arrived beside Jianchen and said softly to him. The old man was an elder of the Changyang clan, possessing the strength of an earth saint master. Jianchen restrained his thoughts and shook his head gently. He said, "There's no need for a funeral, mother and father aren't dead. I will definitely revive them." Hearing that, the old man sighed. He thought that Jianchen had become overly stricken in grief, that he became slightly confused. "Elder, just who are the four people who just left?" Jianchen asked softly. His tone was very indifferent, without any signs of emotions. The old man thought slightly before speaking out. "Fourth young master, I'm not sure who the four people are. However, I think I heard that they're people from some Bloodsword sect." "The Bloodsword sect?" Jianchen muttered with a low voice. A sliver of doubt flashed across his eyes. He was extremely unfamiliar with the name of the sect. After hesitating for a while, Jianchen left from the place, going to the gardens of the Changyang Manor. He saw that the ancestor of the Bai family, Bai Hai, was currently sitting in the pavilion of the garden by himself, drinking to drown his sorrows. Jianchen gazed at the Bai family ancestor with a complicated expression. He knew that what happened to his mother also made the ancestor rather pained. After all, the current Bai family was no longer the Bai family of the past. In other words, every descendant of the Bai family was beloved and treasured by Bai Hai. Grandfather. Jianchen arrived in the pavilion and sat opposite of Bai Hai. Bai Hai placed down his glass of wine and raised his head to look at Jianchen. Through Jianchen's peaceful gaze, he could already tell that Jianchen had gotten over the pain from a few days ago. Bai Hai sighed softly and said, "Grandson, preserve your parents' bodies well. You're already a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. Once you reach Class 7, you should have the power to revive your parents." As he finished speaking, Bai Hai poured himself another full glass of wine and downed the whole thing. Jianchen nodded and said, Grandfather, grandson has something to ask you. Does grandfather know about the Bloodsword sect? Hearing the two words, a gleam of light immediately flashed across Bai Hai's eyes. He stared at Jian Chun with shining eyes and said sternly, Grandson, where did you learn about the Bloodsword sect? The four middle-aged men from before should be people of the Bloodsword sect. Jian Chun replied, What? They're from the Bloodsword sect. Bai Hai was slightly surprised, though he recovered shortly afterwards. He mumbled, No wonder the four of them always had such a thick layer of baleful force. That should be from killing countless people, and condensed using a special method. So they're actually from the Bloodsword sect. A sliver of recollection appeared in Bai Hai's eyes, as the past flashed across his mind in the form of images. He slowly finished off his glass of wine and said slowly, I indeed do know some things about the Bloodsword sect, though it's very limited. The Bloodsword sect is one of 3 well-known assassination organizations of the Tianyuan continent. They place second of the 3. Not only are they extremely mysterious, their strength is rather great too, standing above hermit clans, and on level ground with ancient clans. However, 1,000 years ago, there was a great war between the 3 assassination organizations for some reason, and after the war, the Bloodsword sect completely disappeared from the Tianyuan continent. Afterwards, they never appeared again. I just never thought that the 4 of them were actually from the Bloodsword sect. Grandpa, then do you know who the sect master of the Bloodsword sect is? Jian Chun asked. Since the 4 experts were sent by the sect master of the Bloodsword sect, the sect master definitely would have some connection with Jian Chun. Otherwise, why would the sect appear once again from vanishing for 1,000 years? And why would they help him and prevent a disastrous calamity for the Changyang clan? Bai Hai shook his head. In that age, I was just a mere heaven saint master. With the status of the Bloodsword sect master, and the mysterious history of the sect, where would I get the right to learn the sect master's name? Hee, not many people know the sect master's name on the Tianyuan continent, though I just happen to be one of them. At this moment, an old voice echoed from somewhere nearby. Jian Chun saw the old woman referred to as Grandma Wang, by Tian Muling slowly, make her way towards the pavilion with her cane. Jian Chun and Bai Hai both stood up immediately, clasping their hands at the old woman at the same time. I greet Senior. Wang Yanhong chuckled. No need to be so polite. I've eavesdropped the conversation between the two of you without permission, so please forgive me. However, I do know quite some things about the Bloodsword sect you've mentioned, Jian Chun. Jian Chun hurried to invite the old woman into the pavilion courteously. He had already learnt that the Flame mercenaries encountered a disaster from the people who had come over from the mercenaries. Even newbies, Bai Hai and Jetatai, were heavily injured. The old woman in front of him had lent a helping hand in the very end, which saved the mercenaries. As a result, Jian Chun was extremely grateful towards the old woman. Senior, please tell me about the Bloodsword sect. As soon as the old woman sat down, Jian Chun asked impatiently. The old woman smiled benevolently and said, Jian Chun, before I tell you about the Bloodsword sect, I have something to discuss about with you. Before, I helped you repel the enemies at the Flame mercenaries, and saved your relatives and friends. However, I haven't done it for nothing. Since I've helped you, there naturally will be a reciprocation. Jian Chun, you must remember that you owe me a favor. Jian Chun became serious. He said sternly, Senior, Junior will never forget your kindness. A drop of kindness will be returned as a fountain. If there are any areas where Senior would need Jian Chun, Junior will do everything he can. Jian Chun will never purposely evade this. Jian Chun just could not imagine the outcome of the Flame mercenaries if the old woman had not helped out when they were assaulted by the 5 saint rulers. Although his relatives and friends would not die, they would definitely fall into position between a rock and a hard place. Hearing what Jian Chun had said, Wang Yanhong smiled. Then I'll tell you about the Bloodsword sect next. The Bloodsword sect is a powerful assassination organization on the Tianyuan continent. It has already been around for several tens of thousand years and possesses strength that is equal to ancient clans. The method they practice uses slaughter to increase their strength. Every time they kill a person, they will condense a strand of baleful force. The more they kill, the thicker the baleful force they can condense. Not only is the force able to stun people, causing them to become all sluggish temporarily, it can also wipe out people's soul. They can kill without any signs, which is a worry to all people on the Tianyuan continent. However, the baleful force of the Bloodsword sect also has a great disadvantage, that it's a consumable. If they use too much, they can only replenish it through slaughtering people. As a result, baleful force is only used often by those below Heaven Saint Master, while Saint rulers rarely ever use it against their opponent, unless it's a moment of life or death. Saint rulers are restrained by celestial decay, unable to conduct massacres, so their baleful force decreases, as they use it without any way of replenishing it. However, when saint rulers of the Bloodsword sect do happen to use baleful force, they can kill saint rulers with just a single strike, unless the opponent is just overly powerful. This is their greatest life-saving tactic. Speaking up to there, a sliver of dread appeared in the depths of Wang Yanhong's eyes. Is that so? No wonder I felt the thick baleful force around them. It must have been condensed before they became saint rulers. Jianshan thought. He could not help but think back to the 4 red-clothed men. But 1,000 years ago, something happened between the 3 great assassination organizations. It was caused by the Bloodsword sect master of that generation. He possessed great talent, becoming a great 9th heavenly layer saint king in just a few thousand years. He became the only expert who was infinitesimally close to being a saint emperor from the Bloodsword sect. And because of him, the Bloodsword sect rose greatly in power. They became a sect that completely overtook ancient clans, an existence that could rival the 10 guardian clans. Reaching such a level in strength, the sect master also became one of the few great experts of the Tianyuan continent. As a result, he came up with the idea of unifying all assassination organizations. This led to the other 2 assassination organizations forming a treaty and going to war against the Bloodsword sect. However, the sect master back then was already standing on the apex. Even on the entire Tianyuan continent, only Mercenary City, the 10 guardian clans, and the Lord of the Carnal Desire Way could rival him. Although the other 2 assassination organizations formed a treaty, they still failed to handle the Bloodsword sect. Even the leaders of the 2 organizations were injured by the sect master, causing the organization to arrive at the brink of destruction. But just at that moment, something unfortunate happened. The other 2 organizations actually schemed and baited out the sect master's partner and killed her in an ambush. Her soul was wiped out and utterly destroyed, which even prevented powerful radiant saint masters to revive her. The partner was found by the sect master before he reached Saint King, so she held an extremely great position in the sect master's heart. Also, before she had died, she was actually pregnant. The death of his partner dealt a heavy blow to the sect master. In just a night, the sect master's appearance underwent an upheaving change. His 20-odd-year-old, handsome appearance which he always maintained became old in just a night. Even his dark hair turned silvery gray. Afterwards, the sect master used 10,000-year-old heavenly resources to revive the child in his partner's womb. He went to the 2 organizations with just his fallen partner and young son, and held a mad massacre in vengeance. In that battle, the sect master caused damage that was capable of ending both organizations. All the powerful members of the organizations died in the hands of the sect master, heavily weakening both organizations. After that had happened, the Bloodsword sect, renowned on the entire continent, disappeared from the Tianyuan continent. The sect master never appeared on the continent again, without any trace at all. He seemed to just have vanished, with no one knowing his whereabouts. During that period there were many rumors. Some said that the sect master had fallen from celestial decay, due to the great massacre he had committed. Some said that the sect master had become overwhelmed with grief, and went on to follow his dead wife. There were also others who said the sect masters had already retired from the continent, living a life of no worldly affairs. But no matter how exaggerated the rumors were, the sect master has never showed up on the continent even until now. No one knows whether he's retired or gone to chase after his wife. Senior, then do you know the name of the sect master? Jianshen's tone was rather urgent. Wang Yanhong thought back for a while and said, I learnt the name of the sect master from the ancestor of the Tianmu clan. His name is Xiao Houston. Chapter 722. The mysterious group in the mountain range of magical beasts Xiao Houston. Jianshen muttered. A gleam of light exploded in his eyes while in his mind, he could not help but think of Uncle Xiao's old but straight body. Xiao Houston, Uncle Xiao. The sect master of the Bloodsword sect actually has the same surname as Uncle Xiao from Longevity Valley. Perhaps they're the same people? Jianshen thought. He could not help but think of the moment when Uncle Xiao had first seen the small white tiger. Thinking of the tiger, Jianshen could not help but look at his shoulder. He only saw the snow-white tiger fast asleep, curled up on his shoulder like a small cat. It was digesting the medicinal effects deposited in his body by the heavenly resources. Afterwards, Jianshen looked at the powerful Wang Yanhong. He only saw Wang Yanhong stare at him with a flickering gaze, completely ignoring the white tiger on his shoulder. She clearly was unable to discern the white tiger's true identity. Jianshen, perhaps you've seen the sect master of the Bloodsword sect? Wang Yanhong's eyes glowed with curiosity and stared deeply at Jianshen. Wang Yanhong had also seen the 4 red-clothed men who had appeared at the Changyang Manor, and had already guessed their identities from the thick baleful force they gave off. They were people of the Bloodsword sect that had disappeared 1,000 years ago, and they were not weak. They clearly held a certain status within the sect. Wang Yanhong was also extremely curious about why the Bloodsword sect had come to the Changyang Manor. She wanted to know the answer. Her first guess was that Jianshen had some connection with the Bloodsword sect. Jianshen shook his head. Senior, I've only learnt about the Bloodsword sect today, let alone knowing the sect master. Although he had put it in such a way, images of Uncle Xiao constantly floated through his mind. Jianshen always felt that Uncle Xiao was extremely profound, and he shared the same surname with the Bloodsword sect master. Also, Uncle Xiao's family situation matched up extremely well with what the sect master had suffered. He had no partner, only a son and a grandson. Jianshen just did not know how old Xiaomi was. Also, only the Grand Elder of Mercenary City and Uncle Xiao could tell the white tiger's identity with a glance up until now. That was enough to show Uncle Xiao's extraordinaire. Though, Jianshen only guessed that the Bloodsword sect master might have some connection with Uncle Xiao. He had yet to confirm it. Leaving the garden, Jianshen immediately spent a great amount to buy a 1,000-year ice coffin, which he placed his parents' corpses inside. Although powerful radiant saint masters could revive the dead, the bodies had to remain in a good condition. Jianshen stayed in the Changyang Manor for 7 days. In those 7 days, the Changyang Manor was always overcast by a cloud of gloominess, and after the 7 days, many of those who had come to express sympathy had already left. There was barely anyone left, but they still had not taken a single step into the manor. 7 days later, Jianshen had gotten over his sorrow. However, what had happened to his parents left an irremovable mark on Jianshen. It caused him to become colder, always with a stern expression. All the smiles he possessed had disappeared. On that day, Jianshen bid farewell to the people there. He departed from the Changyang Manor with the ice coffins that carried his parents. He was about to go on a long journey, and only feared that a careless accident would happen to his parents' bodies. As a result, he needed to find a safe place to keep the coffins that could guarantee that nothing would happen. Only like that could he leave without any worries. Although ice coffins could be placed into spatial rings, Jianshen did not do that. He was already a powerful saint ruler, but he still had enemies on the Tianyuan continent. Also, the 5 saint rulers were currently pursuing him. If anything were to happen to him, his parents would never see the day of light again. Time could blunt everything. After 7 days of buffering from the tragedy that had occurred with the Changyang clan, it had already begun to settle down. Meanwhile, Jianshen instead carried the ice coffins and soared high up in the sky. He hurried to Qinhuang Kingdom as he planned to keep his parents' bodies in the Qin Heaven Palace, a place that belonged to him to live in. On the same day, Jianshen's uncle, Bai Dao, resigned from his post as the commander of the Imperial Guards. He left Jesson Kingdom on a Class 4 magical beast mount all by himself. In that period of time, Bai Dao had thought everything through. He wanted to quickly increase his strength, and other than training hard and tempering himself through life or death situations, only the baptism of blood could help him. His nephew was the best example. If he remained blindly within the imperial palace, he did not even know how much time it would take for him to become a heaven saint master. Jianshen passed through the space gate at Dazhou Kingdom and returned to the Qinhuang Kingdom. Afterwards, he placed his parents' coffins in the Qin Heaven Palace, entrusting them to the protection of the other 4 imperial protectors. The king of Qinhuang Kingdom and Qinji also felt rather heavy-hearted towards the death of Jianshen's parents. They properly consoled Jianshen. However, under Jianshen's forceful request, the situation with his parents was not announced. Only a very few people within the kingdom knew about it. After he placed down his parents, Jianshen then had a secret conversation with the 4 other imperial protectors elsewhere in the palace. Afterwards, he departed from the kingdom the next day and traveled to Dazhou Kingdom through the space gate. Afterwards, Jianshen visited the Tianqin clan to see Qin Shao once again. Jianshen originally planned to have Qin Shao go with the flame mercenaries to train him, but now with all that had happened with the mercenaries and the fact that he was about to depart from them, he could only give up on the idea of taking Qin Shao away. This was due to the fact that the flame mercenaries were facing a great challenge. Even though they possessed a certain level of strength, the mercenaries were no longer safe, so taking Qin Shao there perhaps would only bring troubles for him. Also because of the winged tiger god, the flame mercenaries would definitely be into the matter sooner or later, and even the Changyang clan would not escape it. If he got Qin Shao to join the mercenaries, it was undoubtedly throwing him into a fire. If something bad happened, it would even pull the Tianqin clan into it. The reason why Jianshen thought like this was because he had a strong premonition. Once the news of the winged tiger god got out, he would probably become a public enemy of the continent. Leaving the Tianqin clan, Jianshen directly returned to the Jesson Kingdom. Afterwards, he called Jeditai and newbies. He told the 2 about the Holy Empire, as well as what the imperial protectors of the Qinhuang Kingdom had requested. When he heard what Jianshen said, newbies declined it straight away, without any additional thought. Jianshen, you definitely must not drag me into it. Each of the 3 great clans of the Holy Empire have saint kings and possess the strength of ancient clans. They cannot be underestimated. Also, the great newbies, have nothing to do with the Holy Kingdom. Their infighting has nothing to do with me. So the great newbies, definitely will not be dragged into this. It's basically a hellhole. Whoever jumps in will suffer losses. Jianshen was not very surprised with newbies' declination. He then looked towards Jeditai. Jeditai maintained a neutral expression. He said extremely indifferently, Jianshen, I've already pledged my loyalty to you. Even my life is yours, so I abide to anything you say. Jianshen nodded, but did not say anything more. Jeditai's behavior had allowed him to rise to a great place in Jianshen's mind. Jianshen thought to himself for a while before speaking. Newbies has put it well. You indeed don't need to be dragged into the infighting of the Holy Empire. If something goes wrong, it'll just cause more problems for you. And there might even be an outcome that is death. Whatever, the 2 of you should stay and stand guard to protect the Changyang Manor and the Flame Mercenaries. I'll be departing tomorrow. Jianshen, you don't need to participate in this difficult and arduous matter. Newbies attempted to persuade Jianshen, but before he had even finished, he was cut off by Jianshen's hand. I have to go to the Holy Empire. It holds the only hope of reviving my parents, so no matter how great the dangers are, I have to go. Jianshen's tone carried a determination that had never appeared before. The morning of the next day, Jianshen bid farewell to everybody before he departed from the Changyang Manor. Jianshen transformed into a bolt of lightning in the sky and arrived at the borders of Jesson Kingdom very soon. Afterwards, he traveled another few thousand kilometers, entering Blue Wind Kingdom. Within the Blue Wind Kingdom, there were plenty of mercenaries and merchants in different attires who constantly entered and exited the third-class city, Wake City. Around 20 kilometers from Wake City, there was a great mountain range. It was the mountain range of magical beasts. In that period of time, there was always a rumor that floated about in Wake City. In the depths of the mountain range of magical beasts, there was a mysterious group. No one knew where the mysterious group came from, nor did they know the identity of the group. They only knew that each member possessed extremely great strength, and that they always moved around in the mountain range, specifically hunting high-class magical beasts. They never left the mountain range, and rarely ever went to the outskirts either. Also, in the recent times, there would always be earth-shaking magical beast roars coming from the mountain range in the middle of the night. It would echo throughout the entire city. Also, occurrences like that had already happened plenty of times. Meanwhile, the great Saint Master who lived in Wake City could discern from the roars if they originated from Class 5 magical beasts. Not long afterwards, a mercenary group emerged from the depths of the mountain range in horrible condition. They brought out hair-raising news. In the depths of the mountain range, the nameless experts of the mysterious group beheaded a Class 5 magical beasts with just a single strike. Chapter 723. Heading to the Holy Empire. Although the mysterious group in the depths of the mountain range of magical beasts outside Wake City was no longer a secret, so much time had already passed that no one knew the identity of this mysterious group. During that time, there were a few more powerful clans and mercenaries groups that wanted to subdue the group. However, all of them failed without any exceptions. The mysterious group seemed to be immune to greed, no matter how great of a condition proposed, and no matter how great of a temptation given. It was unable to move any member of the mysterious group. They seemed to be completely immune to wealth and power. The sky was covered with dark clouds. A muffled thunder rumbled in the sky and echoed across the entire world. It was noon, but everywhere had already become dark. Not long afterwards, pea-sized raindrops fell madly from the sky. The world began to pour with rain, and the originally bustling Wake City immediately became cold, with no one on the streets to be seen. There was only rain, and it washed the dirty streets created by the mercenaries. At that moment, in the peaceful sky above Wake City, a crack suddenly appeared in the dense, dark clouds. A sliver of blue light shone through it, and underneath the thick clouds, a person appeared out of nowhere. Thunder rumbled in the sky. A flash of lightning shot across the sky with dazzling radiance, and created a web below the clouds. The person wore light blue long robes. When the surrounding rain approached him, it was dispersed by an invisible force, unable to reach him at all. He stood underneath the lightning and observed the area below. He seemed to ignore the deafening thunder and streaks of lightning from the surroundings, similar to a god. He was Jianchen, who had come from Jessen Kingdom. Jianchen floated in the sky. His presence enveloped the entire city, and after a while, he slowly opened his eyes. Through the mist in the distance, he could vaguely see the mountain range. He mumbled to himself, "If they're not in the city, then they must be in the mountain range." As soon as he finished speaking, Jianchen turned into an afterimage and disappeared from the sky. He had already flown to the mountain range that was 10 kilometers away with a speed almost invisible to the naked eye. In the depths of the mountain range, a dozen or so large tents were set up under a towering old tree. Outside the tent, there were several big bare-chested men standing in the rain keeping guard. Their swift and forceful gazes were filled with a fierce light. They clearly were not simple people. At that moment, in the most center tent, there were 9 people around a large round table, eating roast magical beast meat as they talked. "Senior and Yun Zheng, it's all thanks to your help that my brothers could escape, terrified but unharmed from the magical beasts." An old man raised a glass of wine and said sincerely to the big man and gentle-looking middle-aged man who sat on the opposite side, "Haha, Kai Er, you don't need to thank me. Yunzheng and I were secretly sent by Captain Jianchen to protect you. Captain Jianchen's request was that every single one of you needed to remain alive under no exceptions. Originally, Yunzheng and I always protected you from the shadows, but who thought that after you guys became Earth Saint Masters, You actually discovered us. Seniorin laughed aloud, his bald head gleaming. Seniorin has put it correctly. Protecting you was only our orders. But now you guys have all become Earth Saint Masters. And also mastered a wondrous technique that can make people's battle capability increase by several-fold abruptly. Also, every one of you have battle skills. And your overall strength is not any weaker than the two of us. If we continue to stay here, we won't be of use anyway. Yunjung said with a smile. Those people were the core members of the Flame Mercenaries that Jianchen initially, then into the mountain range to train. Every single one of them was undergoing life-or-death training, and was extremely loyal. They were reliable, as well as the first group of elites that Jianchen really trusted, and spent a great fortune in raising. When Jianchen left before, he left behind great amounts of monster cores and various battle skills. After the period of training and growth, every single member underwent an upheaving growth in strength. 7 of them had even become Earth Saint Masters, while the remaining dozen or so had reached Great Saint Master. There were no longer any Saint Masters. Listening to what Yunjung said, the people in the tent all pondered silently. Charles said, Brother Yunjung is right. This mountain range of magical beasts is just too small, with the strongest magical beasts only being Class 5. In this period of time, there aren't many Class 5 magical beasts left, after we killed a few. With our current strength, it's pointless to stay any longer. My brothers have already gotten a good grasp with the human tier battle skills, and with the heaven-stolen fortune from Captain, they can easily kill magical beasts that are much stronger than them. The magical beasts here no longer for any threat to us. It's just a pity that Captain is not here. Without his orders we can't just leave here. Qingfeng said with a soft voice. After the period of violent magical beast huntings, Qingfeng had already become the person who improved the fastest in the group. Not only was he the first one to become an Earth Saint Master, he had reached the second cycle just a few days ago. Other than Yunjung and Seniorin, he was the strongest in the group. Although the group of people did not possess the talents of great geniuses, their body constitution had already been improved by the 1,000-year-old 100-grass wine from Jianchen. It allowed them to cultivate at speeds much greater than ordinary people, and with the period of hard training, every single one of them had great improvements. Only if the Captain was here. Ever since we've entered the depths of the mountain range, we haven't left. We don't know much about the situation outside. Emotion sighed. He could not help but think of a handsome righteous face. Just at this moment, a grand presence suddenly descended from outside. Although the presence was gentle, unable to cause any harm to people, it carried a feeling of vast endlessness, as if it represented the world. Even Earth Saint Masters felt weak like ants before the presence. What a immovable presence! Everyone within the tent suddenly became alert. They then threw away the cups in their hands, hurrying out from the tent. Rain continued to pour outside and the sky was gloomy. Yunjung, Seniorin and the members of the Flame Mercenaries who recently became Earth Saint Masters all came out of the central tent together and allowed themselves to be drenched in rain. At the same time, various other people came out one by one from the surrounding tents. They quickly arrived behind Yunjung and the others, and looked around with solemn expressions. They were looking for the source of the presence. In just the time of a breath, the core members of the Flame Mercenaries, who had originally entered the mountain range to train, had all gathered together. Just at that moment, a pale blue light slashed the horizon in half. It flew over the distance like a lightning bolt, and headed right in the direction where the Flame Mercenaries were. Everyone be careful, the person's a Heaven Saint Master. Everyone's expression was filled with vigilance. Meanwhile, a thumb-sized piece of jade had already appeared in Senior Anne's hand. The blue figure that had cut through the sky stopped before the mercenaries in the end, floating above. There, everyone could see his appearance. Observing him clearly, everyone was slightly surprised. Their vigilant expressions immediately disappeared, replaced by expressions of joy and excitement. Captain! It's the Captain! The Captain's returned. Everyone cried out in excitement. They were clearly elated with Jianchen's arrival, and afterwards, they all kneeled on one knee to welcome Jianchen. Jianchen's long, blue robes shook about in the violent wind, His towering body remained dry from the rain. He looked slowly at the large men below, and a faint smile appeared on his expressionless face. He said, "Not bad, well done. Looks like you've all improved greatly during this period of time." Jianchen slowly descended, and with a thought, an invisible force immediately flooded the surroundings, pulling everyone up off the ground. Jianchen was courteously invited into the central tent by several Earth Saint Masters. Afterwards, they gave a general report of what had happened during the years to Jianchen. "Yes, well done. There's actually 7 of you who've become Earth Saint Masters, which has indeed created some surprises for me. With your current strength, staying here won't do you any good." Jianchen took out a wooden box and a stack of books from his space ring. He said, "In this box are Class 6 Radiant Spirit pills. These are some Earth Tier battle skills. You should take these and split the pills evenly between each other as a life-saving measure. As for these Earth Tier battle skills, you can learn them once you've become an Earth Saint Masters. Prepare to leave here tomorrow and go train on the vast continent." "Yes, Captain," the 7 Earth Saint Masters replied together. Each of them had joy that they struggled to conceal in their eyes. "Remember, when you go training on the continent, don't use the name Flame Mercenaries. Go under a different group name." Jianchen warned them once again, before turning his head and said, "Yunzhang, Seniorin, the 2 of you have done well. You've already completed the mission. The 2 of you can report back to the main base of the mercenaries with my keepsake." Jianchen gave them a jade trinket. The trinket was a keepsake from the Changyang clan, and was used for the purpose of identification, but Jianchen no longer had any use for it. "Captain, just where is the main base?" Seniorin asked. Before the Flame Mercenaries had even rose up in power, Yunzhang and him were already sent into the depths of the mountain range, always protecting Jianchen's trusted subordinates. They had never left. Jianchen smiled mysteriously. "Just do some casual investigation when you get out. You'll know where it is." Jianchen stayed for a day, and in that day, he passed on some knowledge about cultivation, as well as his experience of breaking through to Earth Saint Master. At the same time, he left behind a great amount of Class 4 and Class 5 monster cores for everyone. He departed the morning of the next day, and began his journey to the Holy Empire. The Holy Empire was one of the strongest empires on the Tianyuan continent. The Tianyuan continent had a total of 7 capital cities, while the Holy Empire possessed 3 of them. It was greater than either of the other 2 empires. The history of the Holy Empire was ancient. It already had 1,000,000 years of history, and it was commonly said that before Mo Tianyin and the winged tiger god had even appeared, the empire already existed. Also, its status back then was the same as now, domineering and an overlord. Even with so many years behind it, it remained as glorious as it was before. Chapter 724. Surprise visit from Uncle Xiao the Hot. Blazing sun hung in the center of the sky, and radiated with bright light. The terrifying heat radiating from it scattered downwards, and roasted the ground below to a boiling hot temperature. In the center of an endless desert, an obscure figure shot through the sky like a lightning bolt, and reached the horizon in the blink of an eye. As Jianchen flew, he looked at the golden desert below him. He mumbled, "According to the distance on the map, there should be another 2 hours before I pass through this desert. Afterwards, I need to travel for another 2 days before arriving at the Holy Empire." No matter if it was from the Qinhuang Kingdom or the Jessin Kingdom, the Holy Empire was extremely distant. Even with Jianchen's speed, he needed to spend a dozen or so days on the road to reach the empire from Jessin Kingdom. Although Jianchen could use the space gate in Qinhuang Kingdom to directly travel to the Holy Empire millions of kilometers away, he did not do so because he already learnt some things about the Holy Empire from Bai Hai and the 4 imperial protectors of the Qinhuang Kingdom, including information about reaching Class 7 as a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. If Radiant Saint Masters wanted to reach Class 7, they needed to borrow the Saint Artifact in the Holy Empire. Also, the Holy Artifact would not be used at any moment. There was a set time for every time it activated, and from its next activation, there was a 1.5 years of downtime. As a result, Jianchen did not need to hurry to save time, which was why he chose flying as the transportation to reach the empire. As he traveled, he could admire the surrounding scenery, and it carried along with it a feeling of being carefree and leisurely. Jianchen flew over countless mountains and rivers, as well as large, bustling cities. Finally, he entered the borders of the Holy Empire. Of the 3 empires of the continent, the Holy Empire was the most powerful. The area it covered was also extremely great, over 100 times bigger than the Jesson Kingdom. Its population had also reached a shocking level, with over 100 million people. To the Jesson Kingdom's population of a few dozen million, it was like comparing an elephant with an ant. The Holy Empire had 3 capital cities. The capital cities were all controlled by the 3 great clans, with each clan controlling one city. As for the imperial city, it was the capital city located closest to the center, the City of God. Towards the edge of the border, there was a bustling first-class city. At that very moment in the distance, there was a young man in light blue robes who traveled unhurriedly towards the city on a Class 4 magical beast. The young man was Jianchen, of course. Upon entering the Holy Empire, he did not continue his hurried journey. He decided to first enter the city and learn about the local customs and news. After all, Jianchen was extremely unfamiliar with the Holy Empire. He needed to grasp some more accurate information step by step. As Jianchen entered the first-class city, on his Class 4 magical beast slowly, he toured the wide streets. He arrived in front of a relatively large restaurant. He tied up his magical beast mount before he strode into the restaurant. "Sir, welcome to our aromatic guest house. The dishes of our aromatic guest house are made by the best chefs of the entire city, and we have the prettiest female waiters too. We guarantee that Sir will be satisfied. Sir, please come in and take a seat." A waiter immediately went up to receive Jianchen, inviting him in with a smile. Jianchen entered the restaurant and looked around. He decided to find a quiet place to sit down, but shortly afterwards, his gaze landed on an old man who sat in a corner. His eyes widened from shock, while he revealed an expression of disbelief. The old man wore gray, long robes, and his gray hair was tied behind his back with a piece of string. He currently sat in front of a table full of dishes, enjoying the wine and food slowly. The old man seemed extremely ordinary and did not attract anyone's attention. However, it essentially stupefied Jianchen, who had just come in. Jianchen stared at the old man astoundedly. In that moment, he basically doubted whether he was seeing properly or not. Shortly afterwards, he used his hands to rub his eyes before looking again. The shock had completely flooded the depths of his mind. At that moment, the old man suddenly turned his head and looked at Jianchen. With a calm expression and a profound gaze, he said simply, "Jianchen, come sit." The gentle calling of Jianchen instead caused him to freeze when he heard it. He exclaimed quietly, "Uncle Xiao, it's actually you." Jianchen's mental state was greatly disturbed. No matter how he thought, he could never imagine that he would actually meet Uncle Xiao from Longevity Valley in the Holy Empire. Uncle Xiao did not say anything more. He sat there by himself, eating and drinking, and did not continue to pay any more attention to Jianchen. Jianchen sucked in a deep breath. He forcefully suppressed the shock and agitation within him, sitting in front of Uncle Xiao. Afterwards, he immediately asked with doubt, "Uncle Xiao, why are you here?" Uncle Xiao looked at Jianchen. "This time I've come specially for you." "For me?" A sliver of doubt appeared in Jianchen's eyes. "Jianchen, I know you've come to the Holy Empire this time to reach Class 7 as a Radiant Saint Master," Uncle Xiao said peacefully. However, his peaceful tone caused Jianchen to react greatly. He stared at Uncle Xiao in stupefaction while great waves formed in his mental state. Jianchen's identity as a Radiant Saint Master always was his greatest secret. In the world, there were not many who knew his Radiant Saint Master identity. What Jianchen struggled to believe was, when did Uncle Xiao know about his identity as a Radiant Saint Master? At a certain moment earlier, a transparent barrier had been erected around the table where Jianchen and Uncle Xiao sat. Uncle Xiao's calm voice sounded again. "Jianchen, I cultivate darkness attributed Saint Force, so I'm extremely sensitive towards Radiant Saint Force. Also, I've been secretly observing you for a period of time, which is why I know your identity. And I think, it's not just me who knows you're a Radiant Saint Master. The Grand Elder of Mercenary City also probably knows already. Jianchen thought quickly and asked, Uncle Xiao, are you perhaps the sect Master Xiao Houston from the Bloodsword sect? As the 4 saint rulers from the Bloodsword sect, which helped the Changyang clan survive the disaster, were they also secretly sent by you? Uncle Xiao nodded, which basically equated to admitting it. Shortly afterwards, he did not continue the topic with Jianchen and changed it. Jianchen, what identity do you plan on using to reach Class 7? Jianchen had already thought through the question long ago. He replied without any additional thought. I heard that it's extremely hard to obtain a chance to reach Class 7. The Holy Empire definitely will not give outsiders this chance. So I plan on going there with my identity, as the Imperial Protector of the Qinhuang Kingdom, to obtain this chance. Uncle Xiao shook his head. You're wrong, Jianchen. It's not as simple as you think it is. If you really do it like that, even if you become a Class 7, Radiant Saint Master, you'll be forever bound to the Radiant Saint Master Union, and lose your freedom. Chapter 725. The City of God. Jianchen was slightly shocked. He asked with a soft voice, Uncle Xiao, perhaps there are some other secrets to it? Uncle Xiao nodded. Correct, it's just like you put it. There are indeed secrets that few people know about. He slowly finished off a cup of wine and said, If you want a chance at breaking through to Class 7, you need to be a core member of the Radiant Saint Master Union, or someone from the 3 great clans of the Empire. It's impossible for outsiders to obtain a chance. Also, the Radiant Saint Master Union and the 3 clans will definitely not let high-class Radiant Saint Masters just pass by, and will coerce and bribe them to join their forces. As a result, in the Holy Empire, or even the entire Tianyuan continent, basically all the Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters belong to the Union, or the 3 clans. There are only a few people who can remain unbounded to the clans and Union, and they need at least an organization with the strength of an ancient clan backing them up to retain their freedom. Uncle Xiao looked at Jianchen. Jianchen, you may be one of the imperial protectors of the Qinhuang Kingdom, but that identity will not be able to protect you at all. This is because the Qinhuang Kingdom is only a subsidiary country of one of the 3 clans. Once your identity is revealed, your movements will become greatly restricted. Also, in all of history, a Radiant Saint Master cannot be a fighter as well. Not only have you already become a Saint Ruler, you also possess the abilities of a Radiant Saint Master. Something this weird has never happened on the Tianyuan continent, not even in the ancient times. Once your secret about being both a fighter and a Radiant Saint Master is discovered by the Radiant Saint Master Union, it will definitely affect you. As for the outcome you have faced, I have no idea, so it's best if you don't carelessly reveal that secret before you possess the strength to resist the Holy Empire. Jianchen went silent. What Uncle Xiao had told him completely destroyed his plans. With that, not only did he have to keep his identity as an imperial protector hidden, he needed to conceal it as much as he could. Otherwise, once people knew that he was both a fighter and a Radiant Saint Master, it would definitely create trouble for him. Regarding the fact that he was a Radiant Saint Master, Jianchen already knew that revealing it would cause some certain effects. Though he was confident that with his strength as a Saint Ruler and the important status as an Imperial Protector, the small troubles caused would not be problematic. However, he never thought that the situation was much more severe than he had initially thought. It had completely exceeded his expectations. Uncle Xiao continued. Other than that, there is another great secret to the Union. This secret directly affects all Class 7, Radiant Saint Master. My main reason for coming and finding you is because of this. Hearing that, Jianchen suppressed the concern in his mind. He stared directly into Uncle Xiao's eyes, and waited for what he was going to say next. Uncle Xiao's expression became stern, which was rather rare. Jianchen, if you didn't become a Class 6, Radiant Saint Master, joining the Union would inhibit you only slightly, but the inhibition is not that great. What really is important is that if you reach Class 7, All your actions will be restrained by the Union and then forced into a secret research program. Not only will you lose your freedom, it'll even possibly threaten your life. Jian Chen's heart skipped a beat. He had never thought that the Radiant Saint Masters had such a dark side to it. Uncle Xiao, just what is this secret research project? Jian Chen could not suppress the curiosity in his heart, so he asked. Uncle Xiao paused slightly before continuing. The secret of breaking through Class 7 and reaching Class 8. Jian Chen was slightly stunned. Uncle Xiao, aren't there any Class 8 Radiant Saint Masters on the continent? Class 8 Radiant Saint Masters are heaven-defying existences. Why would they appear so easily? Uncle Xiao slowly raised his head to look at the ceiling of the restaurant. His vision seemed to be able to pass through the various obstructions and see the faraway stars. He said slowly, "It's already been countless years since a Class 8 Radiant Saint Masters appeared. According to my understanding from some ancient records, a Class 8 Radiant Saint Master has only appeared once in the ancient times, and only that one time. Afterwards, there were no more Class 8 Radiant Saint Masters, because they are just too heaven-defying." Heaven-defying? Uncle Xiao, perhaps Class 8 Radiant Saint Masters have some great ability? Great curiosity bloomed in Jian Chen's heart. He was a Radiant Saint Master himself, so he was naturally extremely curious as to the abilities Radiant Saint Masters could possess. Class 8 Radiant Saint Masters indeed possess a heaven-defying ability. This ability is so great that it can even be terrifying. They can awaken the residue soul within ruler armaments and revive saint rulers from the ruler armament they left behind when they passed away. Jian Chen's body jerked involuntarily. He stared at Uncle Xiao in disbelief, and great waves of shock had begun surging in his heart. Undash. Uncle Xiao, is this true? Can they really use ruler armaments to revive their owners? Jian Chen asked with a trembling voice. As for whether it's true or not, I do not know. It's only some ancient rumors that I read from some records, though this isn't any secret to the large clans on the Tianyuan continent. Basically every ancient clan knows about this, and even some hermit clans know about it too. Uncle Xiao said. Jian Chen's heartbeat began to speed up. Before, he had learnt this from Du Gufeng and Huang Wuan during the gathering of mercenaries, but he only thought it was a fake rumor at that time. He did not take it seriously. However, now that he had personally heard the same information from Uncle Xiao, he could not help but believe it. Even though everything seemed false and caused Jian Chen to be flooded with disbelief, yearning also appeared in Jian Chen's heart, a yearning for becoming a Class 8 Radiant Saint Master. Class 8 Radiant Saint Masters are actually so heaven-defying. I wonder if I can reach such a level in my lifetime. Jian Chen thought to himself. At that moment, Uncle Xiao continued. The research of the Radiant Saint Master Union has gone on for a very long time already. Almost every Class 7 Radiant Saint Master has devoted themselves to the research, but they've never succeeded and instead ruined many Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters. So, Jian Chen, after you reach Class 7, you must leave the Union. You must not participate in the research, because very few Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters have survived from it. Uncle Xiao, aren't there any Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters who don't want to do it? Jian Chen asked. You don't know how crazy Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters can be to reach Class 8. For that, they're willing to offer up their lives. Although there were a few people who were unwilling to participate in the research in the past, they lost their freedom after they entered the Union. Even if they attempt to escape, they'll just be recaptured by the experts of the three clans. Xiao Houston said. Jian Chen became stern. The information Uncle Xiao had provided him with completely overthrew what he knew about the Radiant Saint Master Union. Suddenly, Jian Chen thought of something. He asked, Uncle Xiao, will anyone recognize the white tiger? Uncle Xiao looked at the sleeping white tiger on Jian Chen's shoulder. On the Tianyuan continent, there are less than 10 people who can recognize the winged tiger god, and the three great empires do not possess any of them. So Jian Chen, you don't have to worry about this. However, you must remember to never reveal the winged tiger god before a Class 7 magical beast. Class 7 magical beasts can feel the suppression from the bloodline of the beast god in the winged tiger god. Hearing that, the burden in Jianshen's heart seemed to collapse. He was completely at ease about it now. Jianshen, I've told you what I need to tell you. I believe you will make smart decisions. Go. With that, Uncle Xiao disappeared without a sound. At the same time, the transparent barrier about the table disappeared. With the barrier gone, Jianshen immediately heard the noisy hubbub of the restaurant. However, the people there did not discover that an elderly man had disappeared in front of where Jianshen was sitting. In fact, they did not even seem to pay any attention to them when they were sitting together, as if they were just empty space. Jianshen stood up slowly. What Uncle Xiao had told him completely destroyed Jianshen's original plan. Right now, he had to come up with a new plan of obtaining the chance to reach Class 7. Jianshen had already lost his appetite. Standing up from his chair, he turned around and left the restaurant. Riding his Class 4 magical beast mount, he departed from the place. After Jianshen left, a person walked past where Jianshen and Uncle Xiao were sitting in the restaurant. Seeing the table full of delicacies, the person could not help but reveal an expression of doubt. He thought hard, then his expression changed greatly. He cried aloud, "I remember, it's that old man. Where'd that old man go? That bastard, he didn't pay." The person immediately ran outside and looked around in the bustling street. He could not help but sigh at the sky as he mumbled, "God damn it, there goes my pay for this month." Jianshen found an inn in the first-class city and replanned what he was going to do after today. 3 days later, Jianshen departed from the city and flew towards one of the 3 capitals of the Holy Empire, the City of God. This was because the Radiant Saint Master Union was there. 2 days later, on a path leading into the City of God, a luxurious carriage rolled quickly over the path. It created a great cloud of dust, and in around the carriage, there were around 50 mercenaries acting as escorts. Esteemed Radiant Saint Master, we only have 30 more kilometers before we arrive at the one of the 3 capitals, the City of God. At this moment, the horse driver suddenly poked his head into the carriage and informed. The tightly shut door of the carriage was suddenly opened, which revealed a youth who seemed to be in his 20s, wearing a long white and luxurious robe. The youth had an extremely handsome expression, and his plain and expressionless gaze seemed to carry an unique charm, as if it was as profound as the vast starry sky. The youth stared at the great city walls that could be vaguely seen in the distance, and revealed a queer light in his eyes. Mrrrrrrr. At this moment, the soft cry of a beast sounded in the carriage. It was a snow-white cat-sized tiger cub that lay on the youth's head, and stood up to look at the faraway walls. Great curiosity could be seen in its bright eyes. Chapter 726. Radiant Saint Master Badges. The youth was Jianshen. Uncle Xiao's arrival had completely changed Jianshen's original plans. Right now, he had already foregone his identity as a fighter, and was ready to go to the City of God and join the Radiant Saint Master Union to become a core member under a different identity. Fortunately, fighters who were also Radiant Saint Masters never appeared on the Tianyuan continent, which provided Jianshen an additional layer of protection. Jianshen did not pay any attention to the small white tiger perched on his head. He also stared into the distance at the vague city wall with great curiosity, and mumbled to himself, "So is that one of the 7 capitals of the Tianyuan continent? It really is big. And from the great twisted city walls, I actually can feel a presence that originates from the ancient times. It's so vast that it even makes me feel pressured. Hee, esteemed Radiant Saint Master, this must be the first time you've come to the City of God. Your understanding of the city is not as great as us, the natives. It's said that the 7 capitals of the continent originate from the ancient times, and were forcefully pulled from the ground by powerful saint emperors. Not only is the city extremely sturdy, it also has the protection of a powerful but mysterious force. Its defensive capabilities are beyond imagination. They say that on the current continent, there is no one who can break through the defense of the 7 capitals. When the city guarding barrier is activated, even 9th heavenly layer Saint Kings can't enter it." A mercenary next to the horse driver on a magical beast said. He was an average-looking middle-aged man. He seemed to be an honest man, as well as the captain of the small mercenary group. Although he was only an Earth Saint Master, he was a native, born and raised in the Holy Empire. So he had a deep understanding of the city of God. Captain Hu Yun, are you saying that the 7 capital cities of the continent were plucked from the ground by peerless experts in the ancient times? Jian Chen's interest was piqued as he asked the middle-aged man. In the depths of his eyes, there was also a vague silver of disbelief. Captain Hu Yun chuckled and said, "Yeah, this rumor is nothing secretive in our Holy Empire. Apparently, all the capitals of the Tianyuan continent were pulled from the ground, or in other words, grown from the ground, by several saint emperors when they used a great technique. Although it's been countless years since then, the 7 capitals still contain a powerful energy. The reinforced walls are basically unbreakable." Jian Chen sucked in a deep breath. He stared at the great, towering city wall as he approached it, and struggled to understand just how powerful the technique needed to be to pull the walls up from the ground. In the next part of the journey, no one said anything. Jian Chen sat in the luxurious carriage, and slowly traveled towards the city of God with the accompaniment of the mercenaries. The city walls were over 100 meters in height. They were snow-white and reflective like mirrors, with not a single crack in them. The entire city wall seemed to be carved from one rock, as if the world had created it. The snow-white walls actually reflected the sunlight and created blurry beams of white light. It filled the place with a sense of sacredness. It was bustling around the 16 great gates of the city. Countless mercenaries and merchants traveled in both directions, while around the gates, there were many soldiers clad in pale silver armor. They stared coldly at the people who constantly passed them. With every group that entered the city, they had to cough up a single shiny gold coin as a fee. This was one of the methods of income for the 3 great clans of the Holy Empire. When Jian Chen passed through the city gates, he could not help but become stern. This was because he could clearly feel the extremely pure and great energy hidden within the city walls. This was the first time Jian Chen recognized that he was actually so insignificant, like a skiff floating in the vast ocean. Also, a powerful pressure encapsulated Jian Chen's entire spirit, which made him feel like he was fighting an invisible foe. Even the thought of resisting failed to cross his mind. Is this the power of Saint Emperors? Looks like the rumors are indeed true. The 7 capital cities of the continent really were pulled up from the ground by ancient Saint Emperors. Jian Chen thought to himself. He entered the city of God without any obstructions, before continuing for another 50 kilometers. Only then did Jian Chen leave the carriage, but not before throwing a bag full of purple coins to Captain Hu Yun. He left soon after. Hu Yun looked at the bag full of glittering purple coins, and was immediately astonished. He called out, "Esteemed Radiant Saint Master, it's not this much, you've given too much. Captain Hu Yun, your brothers are all tired from this journey. Just treat the remaining as a bonus to your brothers." Jian Chen's voice sounded up ahead. He continued on his way without looking back, quickly disappearing into the large, bustling street. The streets of the city of God were extremely wide. They could fit several dozen carriages side by side. Jian Chen looked around as he walked through the streets, and looked upwards at the sky from time to time. Ever since he entered the city of God, he could clearly feel that the energy of the world was several more times abundant here than outside. Also, the more he approached the city center, the richer the energy became. Other than that, the radiant saint force in his surroundings was also several times more abundant than outside. If he wanted to use radiant saint force, Jian Chen believed that he would only need a moment to reach his limit in gathering the energy. It could save him a lot of time for charging up. Apart from that, there were also plenty of powerful people in the city of God. A large portion of the pedestrians and mercenaries on the streets were Earth Saint Masters, and even Heaven Saint Masters were relatively common. It was extremely rare to find Radiant Saint Masters outside, yet they seemed to be extremely common here, present everywhere. Not only was the city of God, one of the 7 capitals of the continent, a place where Radiant Saint Masters gathered, but powerful people were also concentrated here. However, one aspect that piqued Jian Chen's interest was that he saw many Radiant Saint Masters on the street, But they, without any exceptions, all wore a badge of varying color. There was brown, orange, yellow, green, and so on. At this moment, the small tiger did not continue to sleep. It stood on Jianshen's shoulder while it lay on Jianshen's head. It had its head up, looking around with its pair of large, bright eyes, full of curiosity. Everything seemed to carry a freshness to it. At this moment, a series of uniform gallops could be heard in the distance. Several dozen people on magical beasts traveled towards Jianshen, and the people leading them were a male and a female who seemed to be in their 20s. The male wore azure robes and had a strong and sturdy stature. As for the female, she wore white robes and seemed rather charming. Her skin seemed soft like lamb fat, and she was rather pretty. She looked at the mercenaries and merchants on the two sides of the road with a slight disdain, while she carried an expression that held a sliver of arrogance. When the girl inadvertently glanced towards Jianshen, she immediately saw the small tiger on Jianshen's shoulder. The pureness and brilliance of the tiger's gaze was immediately deeply ingrained in the girl's mind. What a cute little animal! The girl inadvertently exclaimed aloud. She looked at the tiger in interest. She struggled to conceal the affection on her face. The young man next to the girl also discovered the small tiger. He then turned to the girl and smiled. Since sister likes it, brother'll buy it for sister as a gift. With that, the young man steered his magical beast mount to block Jianshen's path. He examined Jianshen, and after discovering he was not a member of a large clan in the City of God, he immediately relaxed and said, "This brother, my sister is interested in your animal. Speak your price, I'll buy it." Although the young man bared a smile, his tone was extremely cold. He spoke to Jianshen as if he was commanding him. Jianshen furrowed his eyebrows. He did not even look at the young man and said coldly, "Not selling." With that, he made his way around the young man. The person's gaze grew cold. He turned around and stared at Jianshen's slender figure and said, "Looks like this brother is also a Radiant Saint Master. So why aren't you wearing the Radiant Saint Master badge?" Badge? Hearing the word, Jianshen immediately began thinking. Images of the different colored badges worn by the Radiant Saint Masters he saw on the street flashed through his head. Looks like this badge is distributed by the Union. It should be a symbol of the status as a Radiant Saint Master. Jianshen thought to himself. The girl in white robes arrived in front of Jianshen, on her Class 4 magical beast, with an arrogant expression. She sized up Jianshen, but when she saw Jianshen's appearance, she was slightly surprised. She said, "You look pretty handsome. With your stature and attire, you really do seem like a Radiant Saint Master. But you don't have the badge from the Radiant Saint Master Union, so you must have only awakened your ability as a Radiant Saint Master, and haven't gone to the Union for identification yet. Whatever, even if you're just Class 1, or not even Class 1, I just happen to find you pleasing to the eye. If you offer up that cup to me as a gift, I'll make an exception, and accept you as a male follower. As long as you follow me, I can teach you radiant arts." Jianshen looked up and glanced at the girl who sat on the magical beast high up above. He saw that on the chest of the girl, there was actually a green badge. Jianshen did not know what the different colored badges represented, but he did know that green badges were rather rare. In the 20-odd Radiant Saint Masters he had seen, only 2 or 3 people had green badges, while the rest all had brown, orange or yellow badges. "Apologies, I can't sell this little beast, much less offer it up as a gift." Jianshen declined without any hesitation. Afterwards, he continued on his way without even looking back. "You really don't know how to appreciate things." The girl's complexion immediately became overcast. Chapter 727. Lin. By the young man's expression immediately changed. Instantly, his gaze became a glare and he said coldly, Even a low-class Radiant Saint Master dares to be so arrogant. You really don't know what's good for you. I want to see what abilities you have to stop me from taking this beast's cub." The young man leapt up, quickly and directly flew from his magical beast mount at Jianshen. Like a lightning flash, his hand shot out toward the white tiger on Jianshen's head. A sliver of cold light flashed across Jianshen's eyes. The young man's actions had completely angered Jianshen. However, Jianshen did not react to him. He was now a Radiant Saint Master, so he definitely could not use his powers as a fighter in the public. Otherwise, his secret would just collapse on itself. The white tiger stared closely at the young man who had grabbed at it with its bright eyes. A look of mockery and disdain appeared in those intelligent-looking eyes. Just when the young man had arrived before the tiger, it suddenly opened its small mouth and bit one of the young man's fingers. The young man had never thought that the seemingly harmless beast's cub would possess such great speed, so fast that even he was unable to react. As soon as his finger was bitten by the tiger cub, he immediately felt a strong sensation of pain. It caused the young man's expression to change greatly, before crying out painfully without any control. "Arg!" The young man gave out a miserable cry of pain. He actually retreated with a greater speed than he had arrived, and retreated to a distance over 10 meters away in the blink of an eye. He stared at the harmless-looking tiger cub on Jian Chen's head, still badly shaken. The young man bled from his right hand. His finger was broken by the small tiger's bite, causing his face to twist from the agony. The unbelievable scene attracted the attention of bystanders. They were all rather surprised and stared at the tiger cub. No one thought that such a harmless-looking tiger cub could actually bite and break a person's finger so quickly, especially a great Saint Master's finger, which made it even more unbelievable. Just what is this magical beast? The young man forcefully suppressed the pain from his hand and cried out aloud as he stared at the tiger in shock. His calm mental state was no longer existent, because he actually failed to detect how the tiger cub had broken his finger with a bite. All he felt was an agonizing pain as soon as he grabbed the cub. Who would have thought that this cute tiger cub has such a powerful attack? Quite unexpected. The girl with the green Radiant Saint Master badge on the magical beast stared at the white tiger with even more interest. Her desire for the tiger cub became even stronger. The young man who had his finger broken stared at the white tiger with glimmering eyes before looking at Jian Chen. He said with a deep voice, "Sir, your tiger cub has broken my finger. Justice must be done for me, Lei Minggao. Leave your tiger cub behind. I'll take it to my Lei family. If so, I can forgive you for being disrespectful towards our Lei family." Jian Chen gently lifted the small tiger off of his head and gently rubbed its furry head as he carried it. He glared harshly at the young man, before he turned and left without saying another word. With Jian Chen's current identity, he just could not waste it all here and argue with the young man. If it were not for that fact that he could not use his strength as a fighter, he would have taught the arrogant young man a lesson long ago. Seeing how he was ignored by a mere low-class Radiant Saint Master, Lei Minggao was enraged. He stuck out his hand and pointed at Jian Chen. "Stop him. If justice is not done for me, Lei Minggao, today none of you will dare leave. My finger cannot be broken for nothing." The dozen or so large men who rode behind Lei Minggao and the girl immediately steered their magical beasts and surrounded Jian Chen. Although Radiant Saint Masters possessed an extremely respectable status in the Holy Empire, the Lei family also possessed some strength in the City of God. A mere Radiant Saint Master, who had not even been tested, was viewed as nothing to the Lei family. "Take him down. We'll judge him in the Lei family later," Lei Minggao commanded. "Yes, sir." The dozen or so men replied simultaneously, before lunging at Jian Chen. However, just at this moment, a powerful voice resounded in the surroundings. "How dare you? Your Lei family actually dares to disrespect a Radiant Saint Master. Perhaps your Lei family is challenging the dignity of the Radiant Saint Master Union." The voice immediately stopped the several men from acting so rashly. Each of them stared towards the origin of the voice. Even Lei Minggao's expression changed greatly. There was dread in the depths of his eyes. The Radiant Saint Master Union was an extremely great force in the City of God, and even had connections with the three great clans that controlled the empire. They were an existence that could not be offended no matter what. A middle-aged man in white, long robes caused the crowd to split into two. He walked in with his head high and chest proud, and behind the middle-aged man, there were another two cold-looking middle-aged people. They gave off an icy-cold presence, and possessed the strength of Earth Saint Masters. Lei Minggao stared coldly at the middle-aged man. However, when he discovered the azure badge on the man's chest, His pupils constricted greatly. The girl on the magical beast also noticed the azure badge on the man's chest. Her expression changed slightly and groaned softly. She mumbled to herself with a voice only she could hear. "Aren't you just a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master? If you give me enough time, I can reach the same level as well." The Class 5 Radiant Saint Master looked around, before his gaze landed on the men who surrounded Jian. He snorted and yelled loudly, "How dare you actually move against a Radiant Saint Master? Do you people want to taste the punishment from the Union? Hurry up and move away from me." The Class 5 Radiant Saint Master's loud voice immediately deterred the dozen or so large men from the Lei family. They immediately dispersed and moved far away from Jian without even making a sound. Lei Minggao stood to one side, unwilling to say another word. The depths of his gaze at the Class 5 Radiant Saint Master was filled with dread. Although Radiant Saint Masters were very fragile, their status in the Holy Empire was even greater than his, the third young master of the Lei family. Lei Minggao clenched his fist tightly and glared viciously at Jian. He definitely would not let him off so easily for breaking his finger. The Class 5 Radiant Saint Master arrived in front of Jian under the protection of the two Earth Saint Master. He immediately switched to a smile and said, "Looking at your attire, you must also be a Radiant Saint Master. So why haven't you gone and got yourself tested at the Union?" Jian clasped his hands at the middle-aged man. "Thank you, sir, for helping me out. I was on my way to the Union to be tested, but who would have thought something so troublesome happened?" The Class 5 Radiant Saint Master clearly seemed extremely friendly. Even though Jian seemed to be a low-class Radiant Saint Master in his eyes, he did not look down on him. He smiled. "I'm Lin Bai. If you don't mind, you can call me Uncle Lin Bai. No matter what power you possess, as long as you are a Radiant Saint Master, you can enjoy good treatment wherever you are in the Holy Empire. You have the protection of the Radiant Saint Master Union in the City of God, so you don't have to fear bullies from clans. If they trouble you, you just need to report it to the Union." "Thank you for Uncle Lin Bai's advice." Jian clasped his hands. "Brother, the Union's not far away and I just happen to have some spare time. Why don't I accompany you to the Union to get tested?" Lin Bai said with a smile. Soon afterwards, Jian left together with Lin Bai and the white tiger in his hands. All that was left was Lei Minggao, standing with an overcast expression as he watched Jian disappear into the distance. Now that Jian was with the Class 5 Radiant Saint Master, he would not dare to stop him even with all the courage in the world. "Send 2 people to spy on that kiddo. Report back to me whenever." After ordering the group of guards behind him, he hurried away on his magical beast. His broken finger needed to be healed quickly, otherwise, it would become troublesome to heal after too much time. Fortunately, the injury this time was rather small and was not too difficult to heal. Jian and Lin Bai walked towards the closest branch of the Radiant Saint Master Union, and they talked along the way. Lin Bai spoke unceasingly to Jian and told him about some rules in the City of God, as well as some problems encountered by Radiant Saint Masters. It allowed Jian to gain an even better understanding of the City of God. The two walked around the road for an hour, before finally arriving at a branch of the Union. Even though it was just a branch, it was rather grand. It was just a mere branch of the Union, yet the space it took up was in no aspect smaller than the Changyang Manor. At the main entrance of the Union, there were even a few Earth Saint Masters who stood there like statues, guarding the place. Chapter 728. Shocked Jian stood outside the main gate and observed the branch of the Radiant Saint Master Union. From Lin Bai, not only did he learn that the Radiant Saint Master Union could provide authentication tests for all Radiant Saint Masters, it also provided lodging and food for free to all Radiant Saint Masters. In other words, not exaggerated in the slightest part, the branches of the Union were inns to Radiant Saint Masters. And extremely safe, special and where no one could be harassed. "Brother, you might still be rather unfamiliar here. Come with me. I'll take you to get your Radiant Saint Master class tested." The union attaches great importance to every single Radiant Saint Master. If some high-class Radiant Saint Masters want to go out, the union would even send experts to protect them at all times. Lin Bai explained with a smile as he took Jian Chen into the branch office. Lin Bai glanced at the two large, cold-looking men behind him and said rather complacently, "Brother, you see the two people by me? They are the experts sent by the union to protect me at all times. They're both third cycle Earth Saint Masters." Hearing that, Jian Chen turned around and glanced at the two men as a sliver of amazement flashed across his eyes. He originally thought that the two people were sent from Lin Bai's clan to protect him. He had never thought that the two Earth Saint Masters were sent by the Radiant Saint Master Union, which surprised him quite a lot. Looking at Jian Chen's expression, Lin Bai sniggered. This is the treatment a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master receives. When you reach Class 5 in the future, you too can enjoy treatment like this. As Lin Bai spoke, he led Jian Chen to a counter. On the old wooden chair behind the counter sat a gray-haired elderly man in white, long robes. The old man's eyes were currently tightly closed, and he was asleep. His snores were thunderous, and on the chest on the elderly man there was an azure badge, the same color as Lin Bai's. "Jamie, stop sleeping. You have things to do now." Lin Bai used his right hand to knock the counter heavily a few times, which gave out a few muffled knocks. Being awakened from his sweet dreams, the old man was enraged. Before he had even opened his eyes, he began to roar angrily. "Which ignorant brat dares to wake me, the esteemed Class 5, Radiant Saint Master Jamie, from his dreams? Are you tired of staying in the city of God?" As soon as he completed his angry roar, the old man's angry eyes immediately landed on Lin Bai. He was slightly surprised, which he then laughed awkwardly. Rubbing his head, he said, "Lin Bai boy, it's actually you. It's nothing. I've been awoken from sweet dreams, but I can just have another one later." Lin Bai clearly had already gotten used to the old man's behavior. He extended a hand and pulled Jian Chen ahead. "Jamie, this person's a Radiant Saint Master, though he hasn't been tested. You're the vice manager of this branch, so you test him." Jamie glanced at Jian Chen, but he did not pay too much attention to him. He pulled out a piece of paper carelessly and began writing. "Lin Bai, this is the 20th you've brought. You really are kind-hearted and honest, always so kind and gentle from the bottom of your heart. Perhaps that's the reason why you've reached Class 5 with your current age." Lin Bai smiled slightly, but he did not say anything. "Kid, what's your name? How old are you? Where did you come from? And when did you realize you had the power to use Radiant Saint Force?" Jamie asked without even raising his head. Jian Chen naturally knew that he was asking him. He replied without any hesitation. "I'm Yang Yutian, 24 years old this year. I come from a rural village and accidentally discovered that I could control Radiant Saint Force when I was young." Jamie quickly recorded the information Jian Chen had provided him with before standing up. "Come with me. I'll get you tested for your ability as a Radiant Saint Master." Afterwards, Jian Chen followed Jamie into a secret room at the back of the branch office. As for Lin Bai and his two bodyguards, they also came in. The room was rather large and dark, but also empty. The only thing in there was a fist-sized white rock on a round table in the center of the room. It seemed like a night pearl, and glowed with a faint light. "Yang Yutian, use all you can to control your Radiant Saint Force and pour it all into that white rock," Jamie said indifferently. Jian Chen did not say anything in return. He slowly walked up to the white rock, and after hesitating for a while, he slowly extended his right index finger. In just a second, a faint layer of white light appeared where Jian Chen's finger was, before quickly growing in brightness. Quickly it became a white ball of soft light. With the appearance of the ball of light, the darkness of the surrounding room disappeared. Jamie and Lin Bai's pupils constricted suddenly as they observed that. Jamie's originally uncaring old eyes immediately became to overflow with great vigor. "This kid gathers Radiant Saint Force so quickly," Jamie cried out. His expression became stern for the first time for the day. Lin Bai also stared at Jian Chen in surprise. He too had never thought that a mere low-class Radiant Saint Master, like Jian Chen, could actually gather Radiant Saint Force with such a speed. It had even exceeded his own speed, that of a Class 5, Radiant Saint Master. At this moment, Jianchen suddenly poked the white rock in front of him. The Radiant Saint force on the tip of his finger was immediately poured into the rock, and instantly, the rock began to glow with a dazzling light. At the very start, the light was red, then orange, before turning into yellow. It's yellow. Yang Yutian from a rural village is actually a Class 3, Radiant Saint Master. A 24-year-old Radiant Saint Master. Someone with talent like that definitely has a big future ahead of them. They'll at least reach Class 5, or even Class 6. Jamie stared in shock at the rock glowing with yellow light as he mumbled to himself. Shortly afterwards, the emotion of excitement emerged in his gaze. Suddenly, the yellow light quickly changed. It had already turned into a dark green in the next moment, glowing from the white rock. Class 4, he's actually Class 4. Jamie could no longer retain his composure. He cried out from the bottom of his heart, and looked at Jian Chun with a gaze of disbelief. The way Lin Bai looked at Jian Chun also changed very greatly. At this moment, his heart was beating rapidly as he mumbled to himself. Who would have thought that brother Yang Yutian is already Class 4 even though he's 24 years old? It's not any weaker compared to that treasured daughter from the Lei family. Talent this great should already place within the top 10 of the Holy Empire. The pupils of the two Earth Saint Masters standing beside Lin Bai also constricted abruptly as they stared at Jian Chun in shock. It was quite rare in the Holy Empire for a 24-year-old to reach Class 4. The two of them had seen many Radiant Saint Masters in their lives, yet those who had reached Class 4 were all people in their 40s or 50s without any exception. There were even people who had spent 70 or 80 years to reach such a level. A Class 4 Radiant Saint Master. Ha ha ha. Who would have thought that Yang Yutian is actually Class 4? And that in my tiny third-rate branch office, there would be a 24-year-old Class 4, Radiant Saint Master. Jamie was so excited that he could not control himself anymore, giving out a crazy laugh. At this moment, a quiet crack sounded in the room. A tiny crack had appeared on the white rock, which was used to test Radiant Saint force, before quickly spreading all over the rock with an unbelievable speed. The originally undamaged rock was now covered with spiderweb cracks. Afterwards, there was a boom, and the entire piece of rock suddenly exploded, scattering shrapnel all over the ground. Jamie's laughter came to a screeching stop. He suddenly became stupefied, staring blankly at the floor of broken rock. Disbelief flooded his eyes. Lin Bai also stood there blankly. His mouth was wide open while his eyes had become the size of bells. He said trembling, Class 5. Impossible, Yang Yutian is only 24. How can he reach Class 5? A 24-year-old Class 5, Radiant Saint Master. Geez, that hasn't appeared for thousands of years. Jamie mumbled to himself at a loss. He was unable to believe what was occurring before his eyes. Lin Bai's breathing became labored. He abruptly swung his head to look at Jamie and said hurriedly, Jamie, what are you staring for? Hurry up and take Yang Yutian to the main office to get him tested as a Class 5, Radiant Saint Master. This would be a great service to you, a vice manager of a third-rate branch. Jamie jerked suddenly. He immediately returned to his sentences and said extremely hurriedly, Yeah, Yang Yutian. Quickly come with me to get tested for Class 5 at the main office. At that moment Jamie, a feeble Radiant Saint Master, actually possessed the speed of a fighter. He shot in front of Jian Chun like an arrow, before pulling Jian Chun by the arm towards outside. Afterwards, Lin Bai followed closely behind Jamie with his two bodyguards. In the City of God, a luxurious carriage bearing the symbol of the Radiant Saint Master Union currently galloped down the streets hurriedly, while beside the carriage, there were a dozen or so muscly men escorting it on Class 4 magical beasts. Even more so, there were a few large men ahead, hurrying their mounts to open up a path, constantly calling out at the pedestrians. It piqued the interests of many people, which caused them to discuss about it on the sides. Within the City of God, one of the 7 capitals of the continent, only the clan in control of the City of God and the Radiant Saint Master Union dared to rampage down the streets without any worry. Within the carriage, Jianchen sat comfortably on a soft seat, while he held the snow-white tiger in his hands. As for Lin Bai and Jamie, they sat excitedly on Jianchen's two sides, all filled with anticipation. When they looked at Jianchen, their gazes were extremely complicated. A 24-year-old Class 5, Radiant Saint Master was a rare genius even over several millennia. Chapter 729 Blue Badge 1. Just as Jianchen took the carriage with Jamie towards the main off of the Radiant Saint Master Union, a white-robed old man, who seemed to be in his 70s in a luxurious courtyard, slowly allowed the dense Radiant Saint force around his hands to dissipate. On the old man's chest was an exquisite blue badge. The blue badge represented a Class 6, Radiant Saint Master, and was distributed by the main office of the Union. Only Class 6, Radiant Saint Masters had the right to wear it. So the old man clearly was a Class 6, Radiant Saint Master. Before the old man sat Lei Minggao, the person who had fallen out with Jianchen, before having his finger broken by the small white tiger. He was currently moving his right index finger, which had just been healed. Minggao, fortunately you rushed back to the clan in time. Otherwise, the wound would begin to coagulate if too much time passed. Then, even I won't have the power to fix it. Only the elders of the Union would possess that power. The Class 6, Radiant Saint Master said to him with no expression. Lei Minggao stood up from the seat. He bowed courteously to the old man and said, "Thank you, third grandfather, for healing Mingo's finger. Minggao will never forget third grandfather's deed." The Class 6, Radiant Saint Master sighed. "Minggao, although our Lei family has some status in the City of God, we aren't all powerful. There are plenty of clans greater than our Lei family in the city. You shouldn't cause so much trouble." Minggao will take third grandfather's wisdom to the heart. Before the old man, Lei Minggao did not dare to be brash. His third grandfather was the only Class 6, Radiant Saint Master of the family after all, as well as a core member of the Radiant Saint Master Union. He possessed an extremely great status. The Radiant Saint Master nodded before leaving the room wearily. As soon as he left, the expression of respect on Lei Minggau's face disappeared. He became overcast as he grinded his teeth. Even a mere low-class Radiant Saint Master dares to be so brash before me. And he even broke a finger of mine. If I don't take revenge, do I still have any dignity to face the Lei family anymore? Brother, your sister likes the tiger cub that the low-class Radiant Saint Master owns very much. You have to bring it back for your sister. As soon as Lei Minggao finished speaking, a female's voice echoed from outside. A lady with a green Radiant Saint Master badge walked in. She carried an expression of great arrogance. Seeing the lady, Lei Minggao immediately began to smile. "Sister, don't worry. Your brother will definitely bring back that tiger cub. Brother'll give it to you as a gift." Towards his younger cousin, Lei Minggao did not dare to be impolite. His cousin's status in the family was extremely special, and was much greater than his status as the third young master. This was because his cousin was extremely talented, reaching Class 4 as a Radiant Saint Master when she was 23 years old. She became one of the most outstanding 10 geniuses of the City of God, and bared the high hopes of the elders of the family. She was even praised by an elder of the Radiant Saint Master Union that she would definitely reach Class 6 in another 20 years, and might even possess the potential to reach Class 7. As a result, even though his younger cousin was not a member of the direct line of descent, she possessed a status that completely superseded him, the third young master. This is due to the fact that all Class 7, Radiant Saint Masters would take up the position of an elder of the Union, which was an extremely great status. Even in the entire Union, there were only around 20 elders who had reached Class 7. At this moment, a guard that Lei Minggao had sent to stalk Jianchen hurried in. He knelt on one knee and said, reporting to the young master, "The low-class Radiant Saint Master is currently leaving in a carriage along with the vice manager of a third-rate branch." Looking at their direction, they seemed to be hurrying towards the main office of the Union. Hearing that, Lei Minggao furrowed his eyebrows. After a period of thought, he mumbled to himself, "What's he going to the head office of the Union for?" At this moment, The green-badged lady pondered slightly and said to herself, that low-class Radiant Saint Master seemed to want to go and get tested. The third-rate branch on Sun Street can only test up to Class 4. Once it exceeds Class 4, they need to go to the main office to be tested. Perhaps that untested Radiant Saint Master is already Class 5? As soon as he heard Class 5, Lei Mingo's expression changed. He said dramatically, "Impossible, that's definitely impossible. He looks even younger than me. How can he be a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master?" The lady thought for a while with furrowed eyebrows. Afterwards, she looked coldly towards the guard and said, "Quickly prepare a carriage. I need to go to the head office." "Yes, young lady Lei Yin," the guard replied courteously before rushing off. The female who was referred to as young lady Lei Yin did not hesitate either, leaving immediately. Lei Mingao hesitated slightly as he watched Lei Yin slowly disappear into the distance. With gritted teeth, he immediately began to chase after her. "Sister, wait for brother. I'll come with you." The city of God was extremely large. The luxurious carriage rolled down the wide streets quickly, finally arriving at the center of the city after a whole day and night of travel. It finally came to a stop in front of a grand castle. The castle was the main office of the Radiant Saint Master Union. The castle was extremely big, at least 100 meters in height. The entire castle radiated with a layer of soft white light, carrying with it a holy feeling, and even more so, the pure beauty of sacredness. However, the most eye-catching part was the very top of the castle. There was a ball of light around 10 meters in diameter, completely condensed out a Radiant Saint Master. It did not disperse and seemed to be everlasting. As soon as Jianchen exited the carriage, he was stunned by the scene in front of him. His gaze immediately landed on the ball of dense Radiant Saint force, and he was unable to look away. He could feel that the ball of light contained vast Radiant Saint force, and that the force was so powerful. It was enough to stupefy Jianchen for a while. At this moment, Jamie and Lin Bai exited the carriage rather wearily together. Their gazes also landed on the ball of light at the top of the castle. That's the symbol of the Radiant Saint Master Union. In the very center of that ball of dense Radiant Saint force is the only saint artifact that allows Radiant Saint Masters to reach Class 7. It's activated every 50 years, and every time it's activated, only 10 people can enter and obtain the opportunity to reach Class 7. There is only 1 year, 5 months and 18 days till the next activation. Jamie explained to Jianchen on one side. This was not a secret in the Holy Empire. Almost all Radiant Saint Masters knew about it. Jianchen stared deeply into the powerful ball of Radiant Saint force on the top of the castle. Although it contained the saint artifact that allowed people to reach Class 7, he was unable to see it at all. The dense Radiant Saint force was just too powerful. And there was also an extremely powerful seal outside protecting it. Even his presence could not get through it. Who would have thought that the Union would actually place something so valuable there? Looks like they've made plenty of preparations for the safety of the artifact, and that they don't fear anyone taking it away. Jianchen thought. He forcefully suppressed the unrealistic thoughts that had blossomed in his mind, before following Jamie and Lin Bai into the castle. Jamie brought Jianchen into the huge castle. Within the castle, there were many Radiant Saint Masters in white robes with varying badge colors, gathered together in small groups and conversing. Jianchen followed Jamie to a counter. Behind the counter sat an old man, who also wore an azure badge. "Jamie, you old debauchee, what are you coming to the Union headquarters for, and not staying in your branch? Perhaps you've got a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master to test?" "Gether, you've actually guessed correctly. I've indeed come this time to have someone tested for Class 5. Jamie chuckled. Gether focused his gaze and looked attentively at Lin Bai. He thought in surprise, perhaps this youngster's already reached Class 6? He doesn't even seem to be 50 years old. This is just unbelievable for him to reach Class 6 with such a young age. He actually cultivates several times faster than fighters. Although he was secretly shocked, Gether did not hesitate. He waved his hand and said, "Let's go, I'll take you to get tested." Not long after, Jianchen and the others followed Gether into a secret room. Gether pulled out a thumb-sized bead from a decorated box in the room. Before arriving before Lin Bai sternly, he said, "Since you've passed the Class 5 test already, you should already know the rules. I guess I don't need to say any more." Chapter 730. Blue Badge 2. Gether did not hand the item for testing Radiant Saint Masters to Jianchen. Instead, he gave it to the Class 5, Radiant Saint Master Lin Bai, who had the Azure Badge. To him, there was no doubt that Lin Bai was the person who needed to be tested. He knew just how great Lin Bai's talent was. As for his friend of several decades, he did not even think about Jamie. He knew Jamie very well. Although Jamie possessed decent talent, he had only become a Class 5, Radiant Saint Master 2 years ago. It was definitely impossible for him to have a breakthrough again and reach Class 6 so soon. As for Jianchen, he was always ignored by Gether. Jianchen was just too young, and Gether had even believed Jianchen was perhaps Lin Bai's disciple. Gether's actions caused both Lin Bai and Jamie to stare blankly. A sliver of astoundment had even appeared on Jianchen's face. But shortly afterwards, they all revealed a bitter smile. They all understood that Gether misunderstood who needed to be tested. The scene had even caused the two Cold Earth Saint Masters behind Lin Bai to reveal a rarely seen smile of interest. When Gether saw the people's weird expressions, Gether was immediately flooded by a sense of doubt. He stared at Lin Bai in astonishment and asked, "Isn't the person who needs to be tested you?" Lin Bai shook his head with a bitter smile. "I'm only 45 this year, and I only reached Class 5 half a year ago. How is it possible for me to make another breakthrough in just half a year? Sir, you overestimate me." Hearing that, Gether became embarrassed. There were many people in the union responsible for testing, and Gether was one of them. Lin Bai's testing for Class 5 was indeed held at the headquarters, but the person who tested him was not Gether. As a result, Gether did not know about the finer details. Gether then looked towards his good friend of many years, bearing an expression of slight admiration. Even though he struggled to believe it, he had to accept the fact that his good friend was now a step ahead of himself. "Congratulations, Jamie. Who would have thought that you'd make another breakthrough in just 2 years? Now that you're a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master, you have the right to become a core member of the Union and learn Radiant Arts. Though I still don't possess the right to hold tests for Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters. The tests for Class 6 must be held by elders. Just wait here. I'll immediately go and contact an elder." A jade trinket had already appeared in Gether's hand. He contacted the elders using a special method. Jamie immediately extended his hand to stop Gether. He looked at him, unsure of how to react. "Gether, you really are befuddled. You haven't even asked us who is taking the test, and just personally decided that it was Lin Bai or me who had reached Class 6. Jamie took a slight step backwards. He pulled Jianchen in front of him, into Gether's astounded gaze. He said proudly, "This is Brother Yang Yutian. His talent is extremely great, and already possesses quite a great achievement despite being only 24 years old. When he came to my branch to be tested, his dense Radiant Saint force actually destroyed the testing rock. Although he's quite young, he's already a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master. This was why I came to the Union from far away, to have Yang Yutian tested for Class 5. Gether, do you finally understand, you befuddled old man? This time, the person to be tested is not me or Lin Bai, but him." "What? The person to be tested is him? He's already reached Class 5? Gether was greatly stunned as he looked at Jianchen in disbelief. Although 24-year-old Class 5 Radiant Saint Masters had appeared on the continent before, they were extremely rare. It had already been several millennia since such a young, high-class Radiant Saint Master had appeared. Jamie chuckled complacently and said, "Of course, Gether. Do you think that a Class 4 Radiant Saint Master can destroy my testing rock? Whatever. Let's cut to the chase, and quickly get Brother Yang Yutian tested. I can't wait any moment longer." Gether's gaze towards Jianchen was already completely different. He sucked in a deep breath, slowly calming himself. Afterwards, he passed the thumb-sized bead to Jianchen. "The test for Class 5 can start now. Yang Yutian, please pour as much Radiant Saint force as you can into the bead." As long as you get the bead to glow with azure light, you are a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master. Though, I must warn you that the bead had a great repelling force towards Radiant Saint Force. Pouring Radiant Saint Force into it is extremely tiring, so you must give it your all. Jianchen nodded as he took the bead from Gether. With a thought, he immediately began to condense the surrounding Radiant Saint Force, before shortly pouring it into the bead. However, just when Jianchen's Radiant Saint Force approached the bead, it was met with resistance, preventing the Radiant Saint Force from entering the bead. Gether, Linbai and Jamie all stared fixedly at Jianchen. Whether Jianchen was a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master all depended on this step. A sneer of disdain formed on Jianchen's lips. With a soft snort, his thought of controlling the Radiant Saint Force abruptly increased by quite a lot. The Radiant Saint Force in the surroundings immediately began to quickly gather around Jianchen, before being forcefully channeled into the bead by Jianchen. The ordinary-looking bead immediately began to glow with red light. Shortly afterwards, it began to change, going from the original red to orange, then to yellow, before finally turning to green. Gether's heartbeat began to quicken as he stared at the bead that was flashing green, his hands already tightly clenched. Linbai and Jamie were the same as him. Although Jianchen demonstrated power beyond Class 4 by destroying the testing rock, it did not mean that Jianchen was a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master, and only meant he possessed the power of a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master. Whether he really was Class 5 or not would still depend on the test. In the past, there were many people who took the Class 5 test who could make the testing rock explode, but were unable to pour Radiant Saint Force into the bead, or were unable to make the bead glow azure. As a result, they remained Class 4 Radiant Saint Masters. To Linbai and Jamie, although Jianchen possessed the power of a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master, he was still not truly Class 5. As a result, as Jianchen took the test, the two of them observed very attentively, along with some anticipation. At this moment, the green light from the bead jerked. Shortly afterwards, azure light immediately began to spill from the bead, completely replacing the green light. Class 5. Brother Yang Yutian is actually a real Class 5 Radiant Saint Master. Jamie danced about excitedly. It was he who had discovered the genius, as well as he who had escorted the genius to the headquarters to be tested. This was a great meritorious service. Congratulations, Brother Yang Yutian. You've become a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master, an existence respected by tens of thousands. Linbai also revealed a smile from the bottom of his heart, and he hurried to clasp his hands at Jianchen in congratulation. Gether wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. He looked at Jianchen in admiration and envy. Yang Yutian, congratulations on becoming the most outstanding Class 5 Radiant Saint Master of the continent in thousands of years. I hope you can keep up the good work and quickly reach Class 6 and become a core member of the Union, as well as learn Radiant Arts. Before Gether had even finished, he came to a screeching halt. His eyes suddenly began to bulge, and he stared at the bead in Jianchen's hand in disbelief. He only saw the azure light of the bead quickly deepen, at a rate visible with the naked eye. It turned more and more blue, and in a few breaths, the azure light was completely replaced with navy light. Blue this, how is this possible? No, impossible, this is definitely impossible. It's impossible. Gether's eyes became the size of bells. He started at the navy blue bead tongue-tied. He was completely overwhelmed with disbelief. Blue light this, how can this happen? This is the blue light that symbolizes a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. Linbai was absolutely astounded, no longer able to maintain his calm with the storm brewing in his heart. Jamie was also stunned by what he had just seen. He forcefully rubbed his eyes and said with a mouthful, "Impossible. Why would it shine with blue light? I must be seeing wrong. Yes, I must be seeing wrong." However, no matter how forcefully Jamie rubbed his eyes, the light remained a deep navy blue, not the azure he had believed. Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. Yang Yutian is actually a Class 6 Radiant Master, a 26-year-old Radiant Saint Master. Heavens! Gether became a little lost. The shock in his heart had already reached a level that could not be recovered from easily. He believed that at this very moment, he had just witnessed a miracle, an unprecedented miracle. It was not that 24-year-old Class 5, Radiant Saint Masters never appeared on the Tianyuan continent. They only appeared every several millennia. As for a 24-year-old Class 6, Radiant Saint Master, that was a miraculous existence Gether had never even heard of. Even in all of history, a 24-year-old Class 6, Radiant Saint Master had never appeared. Oh my heavens, a 24-year-old Class 6, Radiant Saint Masters actually appeared. This is just unbelievable. Let me contact the elders immediately. Gether immediately shot off with a speed even he did not know he could travel at, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Chapter 731, Blue Badge 3. A 24-year-old Class 6, Radiant Saint Master was just too astounding. As a result, Gether's act of calling the elders could be regarded as extremely quick. Very soon, a series of rapid steps could be heard outside the testing room. Two ruddy old men in luxurious robes rushed in from outside, who beared an exquisitely crafted purple badge on their chests. As for Gether, he followed behind the two old men with an expression of courtesy. Within his eyes, there was respect that originated from the bottom of his heart. It was extremely clear that the two old men possessed quite a great status in the Union. As soon as they entered the secret room, Gether arrived before Jianchen quickly and said courteously, "Esteemed elder, this brother is Yang Yutian. He is the brother Yang Yutian that I spoke of earlier, who has reached Class 6 despite being only 24. The two elders stared at Jianchen with great interest. There was excitement in their eyes that they struggled to conceal, while one of them said hurriedly with a rather husky voice, "Quick, use all you've got and channel Radiant Saint Force into the Saint Bead." Jianchen understood that the Saint Bead the elder referred to was the bead in his hands. Shortly afterwards, without any hesitation, he began to forcefully pour Radiant Saint Force from the world into the bead with a thought. In that moment, Jianchen did not hold back at all. This was because if he wanted to obtain the opportunity to become a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master, he needed to display his great talent and powerful ability. By totally astounding the elders of the Radiant Saint Master Union elders, his possibility of reaching Class 7 would increase. As a result, Jianchen completely dropped his low-key behavior, displaying himself intentionally for the first time. With Jianchen giving his all, the Radiant Saint Force in the surrounding space quickly began to coalesce with an unbelievable speed. Afterwards, under Jianchen's absolute control, it was forced into the Radiant Bead. The Saint Bead immediately began to glow with dazzling light. It changed rapidly from the original red, actually leaping through orange, yellow, green, azure before arriving at blue in just 2 breaths. The speed was actually several times faster than the first time he took the test. The rapidly changing color caused Lin Bai and Gether to suck in a breath of cold air. They could not help but cry out, "What precise control! Even Class 7, Radiant Saint Masters don't have such great control." Good. You've actually reached Class 6, with you ability to control Radiant Saint Force extremely close to Class 7. Great. Our Radiant Saint Master Union now has an unprecedented genius. Ha 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 ha. One of the elders laughed from the bottom of his heart. He was extremely excited. "Child, tell me honestly how old you are." The other elder asked with his husky voice as he stared fixedly at Jianchen. Although his expression was rather calm, his slightly trembling body gave away just exactly how excited the old man was in his heart. "Esteemed elder, I am 24 this year," Jianchen said courteously as he clasped his hands at the elder. The Radiant Saint Master Union used the 7 colors red, orange, yellow, green, azure, blue and purple to categorize Radiant Saint Masters. As for the 2 elders, they had purple badges on their chests. So Jianchen had already deduced the fact that they were Class 7 Radiant Saint Master. Even with the entire continent in respect, Class 7 Radiant Saint Master were not plentiful. There were definitely fewer than 50 of them. But almost all the Radiant Saint Masters at such a level gathered in the City of God. As a result, it was of no surprise that Jianchen could see 2 of them at the same time. Good. Child, you're pretty good. You're the most outstanding genius of our Radiant Saint Master Union, the most dazzling person of the Union. You will definitely become a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master in the future and become one of the elders of the Union. Child, come with us first. We'll take you to the second test. As the husky old man spoke, he pulled Jianshan outside by the arm. Esteemed elder, there's a second test? Jianshan asked curiously. He revealed an expression of doubt. The old man nodded with a smile. He looked at Jianshan as if he was staring at a huge treasure and said kindly, Child, you can call me the 9th elder. The one beside me in the 14th elder. As for the second test, it's only something that Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters can go through. It's used to test how talented the Radiant Saint Master is for Radiant Arts. Since you've already reached Class 6, you naturally have to take the second test. After you finish the test, you're allowed to learn any of the Radiant Arts the Union has collected. Radiant Arts? Jianshan mumbled to himself. He had heard about these Radiant Arts before, from the Radiant Saint Master girl of the Lei family. He had actually heard it again here, which caused him to involuntarily feel extremely curious as to what Radiant Arts were. The 9th and 14th elder did not give any explanations on Radiant Arts. They only pulled Jianshan along as they went outside. What are you kids doing? You can't enter the grounds of the second test. Wait till you reach Class 6. Just when Lin Bai and Jamie intended to follow in, they heard the 14th elders lecturing. Helplessly, the two were filled with regret and could only stop there. Jianshan followed the 9th and 14th elder through an impressive corridor. They went directly to the second floor, passing by many Radiant Saint Masters of differing levels. All the Radiant Saint Masters bowed and greeted the two elders without any exceptions, before all staring curiously and doubtfully at Jianshan. Weird, just who is this younger? How is he able to be so close to these two esteemed elders? Many Radiant Saint Masters mumbled to themselves. As the two elders lead the way, they talked with Jianshan. They constantly asked questions about Jianshan's origins, as well as how he was able to reach Class 6 despite being so young. However, they were all answered with Jianshan's false information that he had prepared beforehand. A stick of incense later, Jianshan followed the two elders into a secret room. The room was extremely large and rather empty, with no one else except for Jianshan and the two elders. High up, there was a layer of white fog moving about. It did not disperse, giving off a sacred light which illuminated the room. Child, this is the place where the second test for Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters is held. It's constructed from several Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters of the Union, along with a few powerful saint rulers. The ceiling of the room is condensed from the most pure Radiant Saint force in the world by the Radiant Saint Masters, before forcefully compressed into fog. Afterwards, a few saint rulers work together to create a powerful and special barrier to lock in the Radiant Saint force, allowing the Radiant Saint force to never disperse and last for an extremely great time. Child, you only need to do your best and try draw the Radiant Saint force from the bindings of the barrier. The 9th elder said softly to Jianshan, Young Yutian, this test is extremely crucial. It tests your talent in practicing Radiant Arts. Radiant Arts are the only method where Radiant Saint Master can attack, so its importance to Radiant Saint Masters is self-evident. You must do your best. The 14th elder said sternly. Jianshan's eyes became lit. He nodded solemnly, before slowly closing his eyes, standing there unmoving. The 9th and 14th elder also looked away from Jianshan, directing their gazes at the dense Radiant Saint force at the ceiling of the room. Suddenly, the barrier close to the ceiling of the room began to ripple violently. Shortly after, the Radiant Saint force fog sealed within began to move slowly. Gradually, the movement became more and more violent, while the ripples spread further and further out. Very soon, all the Radiant Saint force sealed within the barrier began to ripple violently. Seeing that, the 9th and 14th elder furrowed their brows at the same time as they thought. This young Yutian is just too reckless. He really does carry the brashness of young people, not looking into the mysteries of the barrier beforehand, and instead just going at all the Radiant Saint force. The barrier is not just for protecting the Radiant Saint force from dispersing. The real test comes later. Jian Chun was a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master after all. Along with the fact that his presence was innately powerful, and that he had fused with the sword spirits, he could control all the Radiant Saint force within the barrier without much effort at all. Afterwards, he immediately tried to get the Radiant Saint force he controlled to break free from the bindings of the barrier and gather before him. However, just when the Radiant Saint force approached the barrier immediately gave off a great resistance to prevent the Radiant Saint force from leaving. It forcefully locked the Radiant Saint force inside. A sneer curled up at the corner of Jian Chun's lips. He immediately increased his power before gritting his teeth. He actually managed to forcefully pull a strand of Radiant Saint force from the barrier. But in the next moment, a powerful suction suddenly appeared in the barrier, actually sucking the strand of Radiant Saint force back towards itself. Jian Chun became stern. He understood that this was the true test, so he did not attempt to hold back anymore. He increased his control of the Radiant Saint force through his presence once again, slowly drawing and coalescing the Radiant Saint force in front of him against the powerful suction of the barrier. The Radiant Saint force sealed in the barrier of the room was slowly and forcefully drawn out by Jian Chun. Radiant Saint force gathering before Jian Chun gradually became more and more powerful, while the white light given off became more and more dazzling. In the end, it seemed to be like the sun, glowing with light that could illuminate the world. The 9th and 14th elder both witnessed it with bulging eyes and expressions of disbelief. What Jian Chun had done was just too astounding. It was already an extremely difficult task for normal Class 6 Radiant Saint Master to draw a small portion of Radiant Saint force from the barrier, yet Jian Chun had pulled out close to half of all the Radiant Saint force within the barrier. They found it extremely inconceivable, because the more Radiant Saint force was drawn out, the stronger the suction of the barrier became. It was bewildering how Jian Chun, a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master, had drawn 40% of the Radiant Saint force from the barrier. A prodigy, he really is a prodigy. This kid was basically born powerful. The 14th elder could not help but sigh emotionally. The 9th elder did not say anything, though he had pulled out a jade pendant from his clothes and inserted a sliver of his thought into it. Shortly afterwards, the surroundings of the jade pendant began to ripple. The sliver of thought the 9th elder had inserted was already sent away by a mysterious method. In the headquarters of the Radiant Saint Union, an old man sat on a cushion in the highest tower. A layer of Radiant Saint force completely enveloped his body. Suddenly, the Radiant Saint force around the old man rippled, before disappearing in the next moment. The old man suddenly snapped open his eyes and mumbled to himself, "Emergency message. What's happened for them to actually use the emergency message?" An exquisite jade pendant had already appeared in the old man's hand at a certain moment. Shortly afterwards, a weak thought shot out from the pendant, entering the center of the old man's eyebrows. Suddenly the old man was greatly terrified. What? A 24-year-old Class 6 Radiant Saint force? With talent for radiant arts approaching Class 7? The old man immediately stood up from the cushion. A dense ball of Radiant Saint force immediately gathered around the bottom of the old man's feet. Like a cloud, and with a flash of white light, the old man disappeared. Chapter 732. Taking a master without much choice, where the second test was held in the Radiant Saint Master Union. An old man quickly approached the entrance, so fast that he seemed to be stepping on clouds. He was a ruddy old man with eyes that seemed as profound as the vast night sky. It gave people a feeling that if they were not paying attention, they would fall into it and become lost. The old man wore long, white luxurious robes, but he did not carry any sort of badge on his chest. As a result, it was impossible to tell just what class the old man was. As soon as the old man arrived at the second testing room, he was immediately attracted towards the dazzling light inside. Through the blinding light, he could vaguely see a slim person bathing within it. The person seemed like a descending god, filled with a certain holiness. The 9th and 14th elder, not too far away, were both already completely stupefied. They stared tongue-tied at Jian Chun within the white light, and did not discover the old man at the entrance at all. Jian Chen's eyes were tightly closed. His two arms were spread out while his head was raised up high, holding a posture of gazing at the sky. He was currently using all he had to pull the Radiant Saint force from the barrier. At this moment, he was already functioning at his limit as a Class 6, Radiant Saint Master, without holding back anything. This was because he knew that if he wanted to reach Class 7, this was perhaps the more crucial step, as only with a brilliant achievement could he be highly regarded in the Union. This would allow him to have an easier path towards Class 7. He knew many things. There were indeed very few Class 6, Radiant Saint Masters throughout the continent, because most of them had gathered within the City of God. As a result, there were plenty of Class 6, Radiant Saint Masters in the city, with a few being supported by powerful organizations from behind. As for Jian Chen, although he had reached Class 6 at such a young age, and would become the center of attention, he did not have anyone supporting him from behind. It was unable to prevent Radiant Saint Masters with powerful backgrounds from using underhand methods to force him out of a chance to reach Class 7. Jian Chen was even worried about the notion that there were a few people in the Union who would want to eliminate him for a greater chance at reaching Class 7 for themselves. Although Jian Chen had considered doing things with a low profile and without raising too much attention, it was just impossible. After all, only Class 6, Radiant Saint Master could obtain the chance at becoming Class 7, so he could not keep his strength as a Radiant Saint Master concealed. After all, a 24-year-old Class 6, Radiant Saint Master was something miraculous. However, Jian Chen believed that it was not enough with just this. He was also curious about the Radiant Arts, which was why he tried so hard on the second test. After all, the second test was to test talent for practicing Radiant Arts. Towards the ceiling of the room, around 45% of the Radiant Saint force sealed within had been drawn out from the barrier by Jian Chen, where it gathered around Jian Chen, radiating with blinding light. This was Jian Chen's limit. Right now, no matter how hard Jian Chen tried, he was unable to draw any more Radiant Saint force from the barrier. Looks like this is my limit. I just wonder about the results. Jian Chen sighed secretly to himself before slowly releasing the Radiant Saint force that he had forcefully drawn from the barrier. The Radiant Saint force around Jian Chen did not disperse, and was instead all sucked back into the barrier by a force, returning to how it was before. Jian Chen slowly opened his eyes. A sliver of exhaustion appeared on his face. Although Jian Chen did not even spend an hour on the test, the period of time had exhausted a large portion of Jian Chen's mental strength. He had not felt this tired ever since he reached Class 6. Jian Chen turned around wearily. He discovered the stunned 9th and 14th elder with a single glance, and with a change in his mood, a sliver of joy appeared in the depths of his eyes. He clasped his hands. Elders, I've already completed the test. I wonder how I've gone. If it was before, Jian Chen would have still felt rather anxious. But after seeing the expressions of the two elders, he became confident. Okay. Good. Great. Excellent. This result is excellent. For a Class 6, Radiant Saint Master to be able to draw 45% of the Radiant Saint force from the barrier, it means that they are already approaching Class 7. My horizons really have been broadened today. As soon as Jian Chen finished speaking, an old voice sounded from near the door. The old man near the entrance strided in, his gaze at Jian Chen filled with praise and admiration. The old man alerted the 9th and 14th elders, allowing them to return to their senses. When they realized who it was, their expressions both changed and immediately clasped their hands at the old man. I greet the president. Closely afterwards, the 9th elder quickly turned around and scolded at Jian Chen with a low voice. Yang Yutian, this is the president of our union. Why don't you hurry up and greet him? Jian Chen was slightly surprised. However, he did not hesitate and immediately clasped his hands at the old man. Yang Yutian greets the president. The president of the union stared at Jian Chen with a smile and asked affectionately, Child, so you're called Yang Yutian. Tell me, how old are you? President, Yang Yutian is 24 this year. Jian Chen immediately replied. He knew very well that in the Radiant Saint Master Union, The president's power superseded everything. As for the elders, they stood under the president, holding varying statuses similar to patriarchs of different clans. A 24-year-old Radiant Saint Master, along with the talent in practicing radiant arts approaching Class 7. Good. The president was overjoyed. He also felt extremely excited from discovering such a great prodigy today. Shortly afterwards, the president seemed to remember something. A gleam of light immediately flashed across his eyes. Yang Yutian, are you willing to take me as your master, as well as join the Radiant Saint Master Union, and become one of the core members? A sliver of shock flashed across Jian Chen's eyes. The president of the union actually wanted to take him as a disciple. It had greatly exceeded what he was expecting. The sliver of shock in Jian Chen's eyes was caught by the president. He could not help but smile, as he thought Jian Chen was shocked from the sudden but great news. He smiled. Yang Yutian, perhaps you're unwilling to take me as your master? Although that was what he said, there was no underlying tone of dissatisfaction at all. Jian Chen gritted his teeth and thought to himself, whatever, if I can increase the success rate of reaching Class 7 and saving mother and father. So what if it's just temporarily bowing down before someone? Compared to mother and father's lives, how significant is this mere pride? Thinking up to there, Jian Chen bowed low to the president. He said, I'm willing. Disciple Yang Yutian greets master. Congratulations, President, for gaining a disciple with such outstanding talent. What a joyous occasion. The 9th and 14th elders congratulated the president at the same time. The president smiled from the bottom of his heart, before pulling of an exquisitely crafted blue badge from his space ring, passing it to Jian Chen. Yang Yutian, you are the third disciple I've taken. The first one passed away 100 years ago from old age, while the second one is also Class 6, and is currently in seclusion, practicing radiant arts and making preparations for Class 7 in a year's time. This blue badge is the symbol of a Class 6, Radiant Saint Master. You should wear it. Yes, Master. Jian Chen carefully accepted the blue badge from the president, placing it towards the left on his chest. 9th Elder, 14th Elder, the two of you should explain the rules and the other services offered by the union to my third disciple for me. The president turned around and told the two elders, we will follow what the president says. The president clearly held a very high status in the hearts of the two elders, as they both displayed courteous emotions. Child, you should first go with the two elders. Come back here in 3 days. We'll hold the ceremony of becoming a core member of the union. After the ceremony is over, you can enter the Radiant Saint Tower to learn radiant arts. The president turned around again and told Jian Chen. However, when he mentioned the ceremony of becoming a core member, a weird light flashed across the depths of his eyes. Hearing the radiant arts being mentioned again, Jian Chen's curiosity to it increased greatly again. He could not help but ask, Master, just what is these radiant arts? The president chuckled. Radiant arts are the only method that Radiant Saint Masters can use to attack. There's a great variety of them, essentially infinite. Child, once you become a core member and enter the Radiant Saint Tower, you will understand more clearly yourself. Oh right, there's something else I have to remind you about. In this period of time, it's best if you don't come in contact with the people from the Kazda clan, the Kara clan, and the Tsar family. Currently, the Holy Empire seems peaceful, but there's actually a raging storm underground. The peaceful Holy Empire is about to change, though it has nothing to do with the Union at all, as to which clan the Holy Empire falls to. You're not a member of the 3 clans, so it's best if you don't participate in it. Disciple understands. Jian Chen replied purposely with a respectful tone. Witnessing Jian Chen's conduct, the president nodded his head in satisfaction. Shortly afterwards, a white cloud quickly gathered under his feet, completely formed from radiant saint force. Under Jian Chen's astonished gaze, he departed on the cloud. Yang Yutian, do you see? When the president left, he used a radiant arte. He can fly with it, and its speed is also extremely great. If it is practiced to a high level, it's not any slower than saint rulers using spatial force. The 9th elder stared at Jian Chen with a smile. The talent Jian Chun had displayed, along with the fact that he had become a disciple of the president, had already caused the two Class 7 elders to treat him completely differently. If it was another Class 6, Radiant Saint Master, the two of them would not even bother to pay any attention as elders. Radiant Arts, the only was Radiant Saint Masters can attack. I'm looking more and more forwards to it. I wonder just how powerful Radiant Saint Masters, who are known to be harmless, can become after practicing Radiant Arts. Jian Chun thought to himself, Yang Yutian, let's go and sit there for a while. We can explain the rules as well as some other services offered to core members from the union. The 14th elder said kindly. However, with his slightly husky voice, not only did he fail to sound gentle, he sounded rather creepy. Chapter 733. Radiant Arts. 1. Leaving from where the 9th and 14th elders stayed, Jian Chun walked straight towards the exit of the Radiant Saint Master Union. There were a lot of people at the headquarters of the union. Not only were there many white-robed Radiant Saint Masters with badges of varying color, there were also a few people dressed as fighters. Although the fighters were not Radiant Saint Masters, they were members of the union nonetheless. Without a doubt, the blue badge on Jian Chun's chest became the center of attention. All those who walked past Jian Chun could not help but look at Jian Chun with gazes of astonishment and shock. However, even more people looked at the exquisitely crafted blue badge on Jian Chun's chest, displaying envy that they struggled to conceal. Who is this person wearing a blue badge? The blue badge is the symbol of a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. Perhaps this youth in his 20s is a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master? This youth only seems to be around 20, yet he has the right to wear the blue badge. Unbelievable. I'd say that the badge is most likely fake. I'll go contact the 9th elder immediately. What nerves to actually wear a fake badge in the Radiant Saint Union. He'll get more than what he bargained for soon. What clan does this young master belong to actually reach Class 6 so young? I've stayed in the City of God for so long, and I've got some understanding as to the number of high-class Radiant Saint Masters. Why don't I know that person? He probably just seems young, and is most likely an old monster who's lived for a few centuries. He just used some special method to rejuvenate his youth and stayed young. The hubbub of discussion echoed in the surroundings. Jian Chun's appearance had already attracted everyone's attention, because all Radiant Saint Masters with blue badges were important people. They did not appear very often within the union, but every time they did, it would always raise the attention of a lot of people. Jian Chun paid no attention to the sounds of discussions in the surroundings. He had already gotten used to being stared at by countless people long ago. As he gazed about, he only saw that the majority of the Radiant Saint Masters were Class 2 to Class 4. There were very few people carrying the Azure badge of Class 5, and as for the blue Class 6 badge, there was no one else other than him. Jian Chun passed through the corridor and arrived at the ground floor of the union. As soon as he began walking down the corridor, he spotted Lin Bai, Jamie and Gether, jogging over excitedly. Brother Yang Yutian, congratulations on becoming a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. As soon as Jamie arrived in front of Jian Chun, he said a words of congratulation. As for his eyes, they were stuck to the blue badge on Jian Chun's chest, unable to be moved away. They were filled with admiration. Brother Yang Yutian, you've really hit it well from us along the way. Who would have thought that you're actually a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master? Lin Bai said bitterly, while his eyes were also glued to the blue badge. Jian Chun's attitude was easygoing and spoke to them amiably, without any arrogance. After a few casual words with the three of them, he bid farewell to them. He planned on going on a stroll through the streets to see if he could find any materials for the azulite swords. Brother Yang Yutian, I, Lin Bai, am just one idle man. I just happen to have nothing to do. Why don't I take you around the city? I've lived in the City of God for several decades. I might not know the City of God like the back of my hand, but I do know quite a few famous places. Then I will be troubling Brother Lin Bai. Jian Chun clasped his hands at Lin Bai with a smile. Brother Yang Yutian, as a vice manager, I can't leave the branch for too long, so I must hurry back. I won't be able to accompany you, please forgive me. Jamie bid farewell to Jian Shen before leaving with a heart full of joy. This was because he had just received the news that the headquarters were extremely happy with what he did and would promote him to the manager of a second-rate branch, which held much more power than the vice manager of a third-rate branch. Jian Shen and Lin Bai bid farewell to the examiner Gether before going outside. At this moment, Lei Minggao, who had fallen out with Jian Shen, just happened to walk into the headquarters under the lead of his cousin Lei Yin. As soon as the two of them stepped into the building, they met Jian Shen. Almost involuntarily, Lei Minggao and his cousin Lei Yin looked towards Jian Shen's chest. When they discovered the dark blue badge, their expressions suddenly changed greatly as disbelief poured from their eyes. Blue badge, how is this possible? Lei Minggao immediately began to pale. At that moment, he no longer believed his eyes. Seeing Jian Shen's blue badge, even the arrogant Lei Yin was greatly frightened. She mumbled rather gloomily. Impossible, how is this possible? Lei Minggao, Lei Yin, perhaps the two of you still want to take brother Yang Yutian's tiger cub? Lin Bai stared coldly at the two people. Although the clan they belonged to was not weak, Lin Bai was a Class 5, Radiant Saint Master, and was a member who could potentially reach Class 6 in the future. He received the protection of the Union, so he naturally did not fear the mere Lei family. What Lin Bai had said caused Lei Minggao and Lei Yin's expressions to change again. A Class 6, Radiant Saint Master was already a core member of the Union. They definitely could not afford to offend one. Even their clan, the Lei family, did not dare to offend a Class 6, Radiant Saint Master so easily. Jian Shen glanced past the two people indifferently. He did not pay any attention to the two of them at all. With his identity as a Class 6, Radiant Saint Master as well as a Saint Ruler, he was uninterested in bickering with them. Uncle Lin Bai, let's go and stop wasting their precious time. Jian Shen and Lin Bai directly walked past Lei Minggao and Lei Yin. Who would have thought that he's actually a Class 6, Radiant Saint Master? Such a young Class 6, Radiant Saint Master. Unbelievable. Lei Yin mumbled to herself. Her expression was extremely complicated, and shortly afterwards, a gleam of light flashed across her eyes. I must quickly tell third grandfather this. Thinking up to that, Lei Yin turned around and left. She did not pay any attention to Lei Minggao, who had yet to return to his senses. As Jian Shen and Lin Bai strolled through the streets, Jian Shen learnt a little about Lin Bai's background after a small conversation. Lin Bai was not a wealthy son of an aristocratic family. He did not have a great background at all. His hometown was a remote village in the mountains, where everyone there lived off farming and hunting. Lin Bai's parents were extremely simple and ordinary common folk. However, the son that they had did not have the same destiny. Not only was he the smartest child of the village, he accidentally discovered his abilities as a Radiant Saint Master in his youth. Afterwards, he became the most dazzling child prodigy of their area. Lin Bai's talent as a Radiant Saint Master was extremely great. He stayed in the village for around 2 decades. When he was 20, he had already reached Class 3. Afterwards, he was discovered by a Heaven Saint Master of the Union, who was out for a mission. He was brought into the City of God by that Heaven Saint Master, and joined the Union, while also taking a Class 6, Radiant Saint Master as a master. Afterwards, Lin Bai's life underwent a great change, which allowed him to become an outstanding Class 5, Radiant Saint Master when he was only in his 40s. He even had made a name for himself in the Union, and received the high regards of some high-ranking members of the Union. In the City of God, there were even a few people from great clans who wanted to pull Lin Bai to their side, but they were declined. Jian Shen and Lin Bai passed through streets and alleyways, constantly entering and exiting different stores. Only until it was nightfall did they find an inn to settle down. At the same time, in the lantern-lit Lei family, the white-robed Lei Yin arrived before a tall tower. She stood respectfully behind the tightly shut door and said, "Third Grandpa, Lei Yin has news to report." The door began to open slowly. A ray of soft, white light shone through the crack, illuminating the darkness. "Lei Yin, come in." An old voice echoed from inside. "Yes, Third Grandpa." Lei Yin entered with gentle steps and her head down. Inside, There was an old man who sat cross-legged on a cushion. His eyes were closed while he held his fingers in a weird shape. A layer of thick radiant saint force enveloped his entire body. The radiant saint force was rather brisk, constantly surging about. Lei Yin stopped 3 meters away from the old man. "Grandfather," Lei Yin saw a young man who seemed around 20 outside the Union headquarters today. "He's already a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master." The radiant saint force around the old man began to ripple violently. His eyes snapped open and said in surprise, "What? A Class 6 Radiant Saint Master in his 20s? Lei Yin, are you sure you did not see wrong?" At that time, Brother Lei Mingao was also there. If Grandpa doesn't believe it, Grandpa can ask Brother Lei Mingao, or ask the people in the Union. Lei Yin said with a respectful tone, "I've never even thought about a 20-year-old Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. This is just too astounding. I'll go contact my good friends in the Union immediately." A jade pendant immediately appeared in the hands of the old man, and a sliver of thought shot into it from the center of his eyebrows. Chapter 734. Radiant Arts 2. Very soon, a weak presence shot out from the jade pendant, which entered the center of the old man's eyebrows. The old man sat silently with his eyes closed for a little, before they snapped open. He said in surprise, "It's actually true. There really is a 24-year-old person called Yang Yutian, who passed the test for Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters. Isn't his talent a little too great? Unbelievable. Since he's reached Class 6, he definitely will participate in the fight for Class 7 in a year's time. Looks like." The old man's gaze flickered. Shortly afterwards he waved his hand and said, "Lei Yin, you can leave." "Yes, third grandfather." Lei Yin departed courteously. As soon as Lei Yin left, the heavy door closed once again. The old man sat in the closed room pondering. Afterwards he pulled out the jade pendant, and sent another thought into the pendant again, disappearing into it. Within the city of God, a refined middle-aged man sat on a bed in a luxurious manner. In front of the man was a dagger, half a meter long, radiating with soft light as it floated him air. There were energy ripples from the dagger that indicated an extremely great power was hidden inside. The man completely focused his attention on the dagger, which was completely formed from radiant saint force, and sighed softly. "There's still another year and a half till the next time the saint artifact activates. Though my radiant arte is still stuck at the 3rd level. My improvement in these 50 years is quite unsatisfying. I wonder if I still can place in the top 10 during the competition in half a year's time." Suddenly the man's expression changed. With a flip of his hand, an ancient jade pendant appeared in his hand. A weak thought flew out from the pendant, and entered the center of the man's head. The man sat in silence with closed eyes, for a while, before slowly opening his eyes. A strange light appeared in his eyes and he sighed. "There's actually someone who's reached Class 6 when they're 24. Is this true? Inconceivable. Doesn't that mean his speed and improvement is several times greater than fighters? If that's true, then the Lei family's done something great." The middle-aged man dispersed the radiant saint force gathered before him. He stood up from his bed, and paced about the luxurious room pondering. Shortly afterwards the man stopped. He looked towards the door and called out, "Mr. Feng." The door was opened soundlessly. A sturdy and bald man walked in and clasped his hands at the middle-aged man. "Esteemed Mr. Chung, what are you in need of?" The middle-aged man said, "Mr. Feng, a prodigy appeared in the Union today, who reached Class 6 despite being so young. That person's called Yang Yutian. Go track his movement immediately, and after you find him, tell him that I, Chang Duantian, wants to wholeheartedly become friends with him, and that in 2 days, I'll reserve the most famous ferry on Fragrance River, 10 kilometers away from the city. I hope to have a heart-to-heart conversation with him. Yes, Mr. Chung, I'll go do it immediately." The bald man said with a deep voice, "Mr. Feng, I don't know if Yang Yutian is still at the Union. If he's not there, you can use the entire clan to search for him." In the moment the bald man left the room, the indifferent voice of the middle-aged man sounded once again. At the same time, in various locations of the City of God, several important people received the same message. In that moment, almost all powerful clans in the City of God had learnt that a 24-year-old Class 6, Radiant Saint Master had appeared in the Union. In another luxurious manner in the City of God, an old voice echoed from a small, tightly guarded courtyard. A prodigy's appeared in the Union. He's reached Class 6 despite only being 24. This is an extremely rare genius. Xiaoho, immediately take people to look for this person, and invite him as a treasured guest to my home manor. You must remember to never fall out with him. Yes, sir. A cold voice echoed from outside. Shortly afterwards, the black shadow shook slightly and shot off into the distance at great speeds. South of the City of God, a simple-looking middle-aged man sat in a dark basement and practiced his radiant arts. The thick milky white light illuminated the dark basement and bleached everything. At the same time, the entire room was blazing hot, as if it was a sea of fire. The heat completely originated from the radiant arte. If there was a Class 6 master present, he would definitely be extremely shocked, because it was only a phenomenon that would appear when the radiant arte had been practiced to an extremely great level. Even within all the Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters of the City of God, the amount of people who had reached such a level in a radiant arte could be counted on fingers, no more than 10. Suddenly, the expression of the middle-aged man in the basement changed. The radiant saint force radiating with great heat immediately disappeared. Shortly afterwards, the man pulled out a jade pendant, and a sliver of thought shot out from it, into the center of his eyebrows. The middle-aged man sat close-eyed in silence. He said with a deep voice to himself, a 24-year-old Class 6, Radiant Saint Master with talent approaching Class 7 for Radiant Arts, as well as the third disciple of the Union President. Yang Yutian, you make me feel a sliver of threat. A flash of slight coldness flashed across the man's eyes. He then opened the door of the basement. A ball of thick radiant saint force gathered quickly around his feet like a cloud, and the middle-aged man just left, as if he was flying on a cloud. After leaving the basement, the man gazed into the night at the dark, starry sky. He said casually, Shadow, a genius has recently appeared in the Union. He's called Yang Yutian, a Class 6, Radiant Saint Master. Immediately find his whereabouts and invite him to the manor. I want to talk with him. Yes, first young master. A husky voice sounded from a dark corner behind the middle-aged man. Afterwards, there was a soft breeze, before everything returned to calm again. The night was late, and at this moment, Jianchen was currently resting in a luxurious inn. He had no clue that his performance that day had raised the attention of several powerful clans in the City of God. Sigh. After rushing about for a day, I haven't even found a single material that is used to craft the azulate swords. If this continues, I wonder just when will I collect all the materials. Jianchen mumbled to himself as he half laid on the bed, and felt a little down. Radiant arts, the only method in which Radiant Saint Masters can attack. I wonder how powerful it is. I really do look forwards to the moment I enter the Radiant Saint Tower in 3 days. He then thought about the Radiant Arts, and immediately became impatient. He was tempted to go to the Radiant Saint Tower, right now to see the only way Radiant Saint Masters could attack, Radiant Arts. Suddenly, a gleam of light flashed across Jianchen's eyes. He immediately sat up on his bed, and stared in the direction of the door. The tightly closed door was opened silently. A person shrouded in black mist walked in from outside. His appearance could not be seen, while only the outline of body was visible. He seemed like a ghost. Jianchen stared calmly at the person in the black mist, and asked with a deep voice, Who are you? Are you Yang Yutian? The person replied with a question with his husky voice. Correct, that is me. Jianchen did not have any fear. Although the person before him seemed strange, he was only a fighter with darkness-attributed saint force, and he was only a heaven saint master. Yang Yutian, the first young master has invited you to go speak with him. Come with me. The silhouette's husky voice was filled with coldness. Who's the first young master? Jianchen asked calmly. You'll know when you get there, said the shadow. A sneer appeared on Jianchen's lips. He leaned comfortably on his pillow, and did not pay any attention to the black shadow. My apologies, I'm currently resting. I don't have the time to see your young master. Sir, please leave my room. Yang Yutian, you don't know what's good for yourself. The person's voice slowly grew cold, and with it, there was a thick killing intent. Roar. Perhaps it was because of the killing intent. The white tiger on the pillow immediately stood up. It stared angrily at the shadow, and in its intelligent eyes, there was an extremely personified sliver of defiance. Although the tiger was still a Class 5 magical beast, akin to human Earth Saint Masters, it did not show any fear towards the Heaven Saint Master shadow. It even provoked it purposely, clearly looking down on the Heaven Saint Master. Shadow, don't forget where you are. Perhaps you want to move against the esteemed Class 6, Radiant Saint Master? Suddenly, a powerful voice echoed from outside. A sturdy, bold man walked in from outside, his feet floating about the ground. Feng Jianming, you've really come at the wrong time. The shadow sneered. He clearly recognized the big bald man. The bald Feng Jianming glanced at the shadow with a sneer, and said with a mocking tone, all you know is acting about and scaring people. You scare those people who don't know you use darkness-attributed Radiant Saint Force. To me, you're no different from an idiot. What did you say? The black mist began to tremble violently. The husky voice was filled with anger. Shadow, if you're unhappy, we can fight it out and see who's stronger. Though I've got things I gotta do. I don't have the time to bicker with you. I'll fight you any time after I complete the mission Mr. Cheng's told me to do. The big bald man said coldly. The shadow snorted and stopped speaking. Feng Jianming then looked at Jian Shen. The coldness on his face disappeared, changing to a different expression. He bowed courteously to Jian Shen. Esteemed Sir Yang Yutian, I am Feng Jianming. I've come to deliver a message from Mr. Cheng. Mr. Cheng would wholeheartedly like to become friends with you, and has also reserved the most famous ferry on fragrance in 2 days, 10 kilometers from the city. He wishes that he can use that time as an opportunity to have a hearty conversation with you. Mr. Cheng. Jian Shen's interest was piqued. He looked towards the bald man and asked, are you from the Cheng family, one of the 8 great clans who only stand below the Tsar family? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.